Chapter 312. The content of this article is Cataclysm 312 chapters. If you like Cataclysm 312 chapters, please collect them? Come on. Kill him. Kill this human brat. Not only did the human mercenaries not sympathize with Ron, they even cheered for the beastman Torek. Their eyes were bloodthirsty as they watched Ron being dismembered by Torek. Roar. Torek roared. He was finally angry. Being played by a human in the palm of his hand was a great humiliation to him. Because of his anger, Torek's strength suddenly soared. His muscles bulged, and his whole body was filled with violent power. His eyes turned blood-red, and he pounced towards Ron like a wild beast. He took a step forward, and a crack appeared on the ground. It could be seen how powerful he was at this moment. Torek is finally angry. This is the Beastman warrior's innate skill, Berserk. That human brat is dead for sure. Even though Ron had just displayed his magic, the surrounding humans were still not optimistic about Ron's chances. In their view, no matter how high a human's innate skill was, he could not compare to a higher race like the Beastman. It was only a matter of time before he would be defeated. The gap between a higher race and a lower race was not so easy to cross. Stephanie frowned slightly. Brother, what do you think Ron's occupation is? Why can't I see it? Dinwiddie's eyes were fixed on the field, and he wiped the sweat off his forehead. Didn't he say that he was a bone slave, no, a necromancer? He felt that he had completely misjudged Lin Huang. How can a bone slave be so powerful? How can he be so agile? Stephanie did not believe that even she would not be able to dodge the beastman's first axe. There was a huge question mark in everyone's heart. However, the following battle between Torek and Ron made everyone's jaws drop. No matter how angry Torek was, Ron was always calm and unhurried, as if he was taking a leisurely stroll. Dodging his attack, Torek's long-handled axe was like air in his eyes. As for Ron, he was immersed in his own world. Torek's attacks and his movements were mutually corroborating each other, benefiting him a lot. Now, he could see the strength of this Torek. If Ron were to get serious, Torek wouldn't be able to last more than 3 rounds. Whoosh! As the giant axe swept over, Ron leaned slightly to the side and dodged Torek's attack. The sharp side of the giant axe brushed past the tip of his nose, and he felt a slight chill on the tip of his nose. Boom! The giant axe smashed into the ground, sending rubble flying everywhere. Cracks like a spider web appeared on the ground. Ron lightly tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and fled far away. Boom! Boom! After more than 100 moves in a row, Torek couldn't hit Ron. Instead, the ground was destroyed beyond recognition. Ron's indifferent expression made him even more furious. The other readers were watching. The onlookers were already stunned, their jaws almost falling to the ground. When had they ever seen a beastman in such a sorry state? There was no lack of human mercenaries with good eyesight. They had already seen that the human in front of them was far stronger than the beastman. Seeing Ron display his might and teasing the beastman, Basara's tense heart finally relaxed. A trace of a smile appeared on her beautiful face, and her eyes shone with excitement. Ron had already adapted to the opponent's fighting style. Simply feeding him moves had no meaning. At this time, he finally stopped and sneered, "Is that enough?" Torek was already panting from exhaustion. Compared to his physical body, Ron gave him more pressure mentally. He flew into a rage out of humiliation and shouted, "Despicable human, do you only know how to dodge? If you have the guts, don't run." "Okay." After a brief reply, Ron didn't say anything else. He slowly raised the hanging bone spear and aimed it at Torek from afar. A faint killing intent firmly locked onto him. Torek's heart trembled. He knew that this unknown human boy in front of him wasn't easy to deal with, so he became even more cautious. With a faint smile, Ron's figure moved. His entire body shot out like an arrow, the bone spear stabbing towards Torek like a viper. In the blink of an eye, he was already in front of Torek. Before Torek could raise his axe, the sharp-boned spear had already reached his throat like lightning. What? Stephanie, who had been watching, was shocked. Ron's speed was far beyond her imagination. Silence. Silence again. Perhaps some people had expected Torek to be defeated, but they didn't expect him to be defeated so quickly. One move, just one move, and Torek was defeated. Cold sweat flowed down Torek's ugly face. He stared blankly at the bone spear, a trace of the threat of death spreading through his body. He didn't even see how the bone spear stabbed towards him. Fast. Everything happened too quickly. Do you admit defeat? Ron coldly said, You are not my opponent. Impossible. Torek flew into a rage out of humiliation. With a roar, Torek went berserk like a wild beast. He ignored Ron's bone spear at his throat and instead raised his axe, vigorously chopping towards Ron. This guy is crazy. Ron slightly frowned. He sidestepped Torek's axe and his figure moved again, locking the bone spear on Torek's throat. Another one move to defeat the enemy. I can't lose to a human, absolutely not. Torek seemed to have lost his mind. He used his weapon to directly block Ron's bone spear and pounced on him like a wolf. Once, twice. No matter how Torek attacked, Ron's bone spear seemed to have taken root and was always aimed at his throat. However, Torek seemed to have gone crazy. He was certain that his opponent wouldn't dare to kill him, so he frantically attacked Ron. I don't want to lose, I will never admit defeat. He is just a human, how can I lose to him? Torek's face was distorted with anger. Such thoughts constantly emerged in his mind, making him unable to accept the fact that he had lost. The onlookers looked at each other in dismay. In the face of such a shameless battle, they had already lost interest in cheering. Seeing the scene before them, they felt even more ashamed of Torek. He had clearly lost, but he still refused to admit defeat. Ron was also very helpless. He had already achieved his goal of fighting, but killing seemed to be unnecessary. Although this beast man was hateful, it wasn't to the point where he deserved to die. Sighing slightly, Ron's eyes focused. His soul force surged out of his body, and his eyes turned blue. Frost Nova. At this time, the surrounding temperature suddenly dropped by dozens of degrees, causing everyone to involuntarily shiver. At the same time, the ground under Torek's feet also changed. The bone-chilling cold quickly condensed and soon froze. Starting from his legs, it gradually spread to the rest of his body. In just a moment, Torek's huge body from his chest down was completely frozen into an ice sculpture. I'll say it again, you have already lost. If you continue to pester endlessly, don't blame me for being impolite. Coldly looking at Torek, Ron's tone was without a trace of emotion. Traces of killing intent filled the air as he coldly stared at the trapped beast man. The fear of death hit his heart, and a drop of cold sweat appeared on Torek's face. Before it flowed down, it had already frozen into ice. One could imagine how terrifying the cold air of Frost Nova was. I admit defeat. Torek's fighting spirit finally collapsed, and he helplessly accepted the fact that he had lost. At this time, he also understood that compared to the other party, he was still too far away. Slowly nodding, Ron's face also showed a smile. He didn't even say a word. Since the other party had already admitted defeat, he didn't want to be too ruthless. His gaze swept across the surrounding humans, and everyone was dumbstruck. Dinwiddie and the others lowered their heads, not daring to look at him. Ron smiled at her when he found the delighted Becerra in the crowd. The other book friends were reading. Mr. Ron. Becerra bounced over like a cheerful deer, hugged Ron, and couldn't help but kiss him on the cheek. Thank you, Mr. Ron. With a hint of a fresh young girl's fragrance permeating into Ron's nostrils, Ron's heart couldn't help but sway. With Ron's reaction speed, he could avoid this kiss, but in the face of this beautiful girl who was as passionate as fire, he couldn't bear to be ruthless. Beauties love heroes. How could Basara's heart not ripple when she saw a young man around her age defeat a noble beast-man? Vigilantly looking around, Ron whispered, "We can't stay here for long, let's go." "Okay." Basara nodded obediently and obediently left with him. Just as they took a few steps, a roar suddenly came from behind. Torik's pair of blood-red eyes stared fiercely at them with a two-handed long-handled axe in his hand. It was unknown when he broke free from the ice that Ron used to trap him. As if premeditated, Torik's speed was extremely fast, and in the blink of an eye, he was already behind Ron. With a strong sound of breaking air, the axe fiercely chopped down. Ron had just turned his head when the axe came at him, and Basara's face turned pale with fright. "You're courting death." Ron's eyes became cold. He leaned slightly to the side and easily avoided the attack of the axe. At the same time, he slightly raised his left hand and detonated the ice power hidden in Torik's body. Boom! The power of Frost Nova finally broke out, and a large cloud of smoke floated up from the ground. In the explosion, Torik's body flew backward like a kite with a broken string and fell heavily to the ground. When the smoke and dust dissipated, people were shocked to find that only half of Torik's body was left. His legs had disappeared in the explosion of Frost Nova. His whole body was lying on the ground, only breathing out. What terrifying strength! The onlookers were shocked and looked at Ron with fear on their faces. Ron was angry at him. Since he had already admitted defeat and attacked him from behind, he naturally used more force and exploded his legs to teach him a lesson. Although Torik's condition looked serious, as long as there was a priest to heal him, his broken legs could be regrown. "Are you okay?" Ron helped up Basara, who had fallen to the ground in fright, and asked with concern. At this time, his gaze paused. Because Basara was wearing a dance costume, it was already very revealing. But the shock wave caused by the explosion just now had caused her clothes to be pulled down halfway, revealing most of her snow-white chest. The exposed spring scenery stunned Ron. "I'm fine." Basara's face turned red. She immediately pulled up her clothes and stood up awkwardly. "Oh. It's good that you're fine. Let's go." Ron was also a little embarrassed, and came back to his senses after a while. After coldly glancing at Torik, Ron didn't say another word and turned to leave. At this time, a weak voice came from the ground. "You? Who are you?" Ron's footsteps paused slightly. He turned his head slightly and coldly said, "My name is Ron, Archmage Necromancer." Ron, after saying this, he ignored the others and quickly left with Basara. Chapter 313. If you like Cataclysm 313, please add Cataclysm 313 to your collection. On the grassland outside the city of Sand Tower, a few horses were leisurely grazing. Next to them was a row of neat tents, forming a circle. Outside the tents was a fire, and a simple iron pot was gurgling and emitting a fragrant smell. What a good novel! Stacks 56. 56 Shuku. The Gypsy tribe's temporary camp in Sand Tower City. In one of the tents, Ron and Basara were sitting on a bed. On the bed lay a 13 or 14-year-old child. His eyes were closed and he was unconscious. Ron touched the child's forehead. It was burning hot. The other book friends were reading. "Brother Ron, my brother, how is he?" Basara asked anxiously. She had seen her brother unconscious for several days. "It doesn't look like an illness." Ron thought for a moment. "From his breath, it looks like he was poisoned." "Poisoned?" Basara was shocked. "My brother was perfectly fine. How could he be poisoned?" Ron shook his head. "I'm not sure. Was there any sign before this?" "Nothing." Basara blinked her beautiful big eyes. "That day I asked him to cook for me, and he suddenly fainted." "Suddenly fainted?" Ron frowned. "Then what did he do before he fainted? It doesn't seem like anything?" Basara tilted her head and thought for a moment. Her expression was indescribably cute. "Yes, I know. That afternoon, he seemed to have gone up the mountain to pick a very special mushroom. He said he was going to cook for me. Could it be related to this? If that's the case, then it's right. At this time, Ron's eyes fell on the child's feet. He pulled up the child's pants and pointed to a wound. Look, what is this? Basara was surprised. She saw 2 very small wounds. He was bitten by a snake. Ron said helplessly. Then, what will happen? My brother, will he be okay? Basara heard this and became nervous. It's not a big deal. His wound isn't deep. At least for a short time, his life won't be in danger. But it's hard to say in the long run. Ron said with a smile. This is simple. Just a few bottles of antidote will solve it. Antidote? Do you really want the antidote? Basara was shocked and cried out involuntarily. The shop over there sells it for 85 gold coins. This. Ron pondered for a moment. I just ran out of antidotes. How about this? I'll go out and buy some for you later. Ron also saw that Basara did not have much money on her. Since he saved her, he might as well help her to the end. What he didn't know was that it wasn't that Basara wasn't well off, but that she couldn't afford it at all. She didn't even have enough money to buy a bottle of antidote. Big Brother Ron, thank you so much. Basara understood Ron's meaning. She also knew that she met a good person today. She gratefully held Ron's hand and said, You're welcome. It's nothing. Ron smiled and let go of Basara's delicate hand. Okay, I'm going to buy the antidote. I'll be back in a while. Okay. Basara smiled. She thought for a moment and suddenly said softly, Big Brother Ron, it's getting late. Why don't you stay tonight for dinner? When she said this, Basara's face turned red. She looked nervously at Ron, afraid that he would refuse. Ron helped her a lot. Basara could only do this. Ron didn't want to stay in Sand Tower City. But when he saw Basara's expression, he couldn't bear to refuse. He gently nodded and said, Okay. Basara seemed to be relieved. Her face smiled like a flower. She shyly lowered her head and whispered, I'll wait for you to come back. Ron nodded and turned to walk out of the tent. Looking at Ron's back, Basara showed a knowing smile. Not long after, Basara changed out of her gorgeous dance costume and put on a set of shabby home clothes. She hummed a song and walked to the river with a bucket of water. She came back with a bucket full of water. Her thin and weak body carried the heavy bucket of water back to the tent. Basara rolled up her sleeves and began to cook. At this moment, she was humming a song like a happy lark. Suddenly, her body stopped. Her eyes stopped at the bucket next to her. She saw that at some unknown time, ripples had appeared on the surface of the bucket. That was the sound of tremors coming from the ground. The Beastman army is coming. The Beastman army is coming. Along with a cry of alarm, a huge roar resounded through the sky. For a moment, in the gypsy camp, there were panicked shouts everywhere. Children were running around, women were screaming, and men who didn't have any fighting strength were cowering in the tents, shivering in fear. In the distance, a huge cloud of dust had appeared out of nowhere. An army of beastmen was approaching at an extremely fast speed. They were riding on huge war wolves, holding huge war blades in their hand. The sharp teeth of the war wolves glinted with a cold light. These tamed war wolves had the strength of a rank 7 beast. The Beastman Wolf Cavalry, the Beastman Wolf Cavalry, the most powerful cavalry of the Beastman Empire, appeared outside the gypsy camp at this moment. There were more than 1,000 Beastmen Wolf Cavalry. The leader was a ferocious-looking wolf rider. He had an ugly face like the other beastmen. He wore heavy armor and held a sharp long blade in his hand. The giant wolf he was riding on kept roaring, scaring the gypsy children into tears. The leader of the beastmen stood on the giant wolf with a cold expression. He pointed his long blade forward and shouted in a deep voice, "Surround this place. Not even a fly is allowed to fly out." Yes, nearly 1,000 beastmen soldiers responded in unison. The loud sound startled everyone in the camp. What's going on? Why did the beastmen come here? Did they offend someone? The gypsies wandered around to perform in order to earn a pitiful amount of gold coins. They didn't want or have the ability to make enemies with others. But today, the Beastman army suddenly came to attack. The other readers were reading. It's the Beastmen. Basara looked at the Beastman army rushing over. How could she not know what was going on? The scene just now was still vivid in her mind. In the blink of an eye, the Beastmen had already come to the camp. They came so fast. Basara's heart pounded non-stop. Her hands were tightly clenched and became a little pale. Sir Beastman! Sir Beastman! At this time, a middle-aged woman rushed out of nowhere and almost crashed into the mouth of the giant wolf under the Beastman. The giant wolf roared and scared the woman back a few steps. Sir Beastman! I'm the chief of the gypsies, Theodora. May I ask, what did our tribe do? Why did you capture us? The woman asked in fear. You're the chief? The leader of the orc wolf riders coldly sized up this woman who claimed to be the head of the gypsy tribe and said, although Theodora was the chief, she was also quite beautiful. When she was young, she was also a prostitute in the sex industry. She stopped because she was old. Facing the question of the orc wolf riders, she suddenly plucked up her courage and threw a flirtatious look at the orc captain. She purposely puffed out her full chest and answered, yes. The orc captain showed a trace of disgust in his eyes. Not every orc liked human women. He said in a hoarse voice, call out all your tribe members. Theodora's face changed drastically. Call out all her tribe members? What were they going to do? Theodora didn't dare to disobey the orc's order. She suppressed the fear in her heart and sent people to call out all her tribe members in the tents. In the tents, there was a burst of crying. Basara had no choice but to follow her tribe members out of the tents. At this moment, her palms were full of cold sweat, but she forced herself to be calm. Is everyone here? The orc captain asked coldly. He stared at the rows of humans in front of him. There were men, women, old people, and children among them. Most of them were wearing tattered clothes. Many of them had fear on their faces and were trembling. Yes, everyone is here, except for a few sick old people and a child. Theodora answered carefully. Okay. The orc captain pondered for a moment and said, you have a woman called Basara here, right? Basara? All the gypsies looked at each other. How did this have anything to do with Basara? At this moment, Basara walked out of the crowd and said calmly, Sir Orc, I'm Basara. Looking at Basara's charming face, the orc captain's heart also moved. What a beautiful human girl. No wonder young Master Torek was so charmed by her. The orc captain looked coldly at Basara and said, you should know why we're looking for you, right? Sir, Basara doesn't know. Basara's heart had already been set off by stormy waves, but her face still had a calm expression. Looks like you're still planning to play dumb. The orc captain sneered and waved the long sword in his hand. Let me ask you, where is Ron, the one who injured young Master Torek? Ron, an unfamiliar name, appeared in everyone's mind. The Romani gypsies looked at Basara with unfriendly expressions. Needless to say, she was the one who had caused this incident. The other readers were reading. What a jinx! A few gypsies cursed in a low voice. I don't know. Basara made up her mind and said, Big Brother Ron was so good to her. She absolutely could not betray him. It was too late. In an instant, a gust of wind blew on Basara's face. Pa! Basara was firmly slapped in the face. She covered her face in pain and fell to the ground. She looked in disbelief at Patriarch Theodora, who usually took care of her. She was the one who slapped her. Theodora jumped and scolded, You little slut, where did you find this wild man? He actually brought trouble to our home. Theodora put her hands on her hips and scolded Basara. At the same time, she kept winking at her, telling her to hand over the person. Basara covered her face and did not say a word. After scolding for a while, the orc captain became impatient. He waved his hand and said, Okay, stop acting. Basara, where is that human called Ron? Tell me frankly, or you will all die. When he said this, a trace of murderous intent flashed in the orc captain's eyes. Theodora's expression changed drastically. He also softened his tone and begged, "My little lady, you'd better tell us the whereabouts of that wild man. Otherwise, all of our people will be killed by you." 56 Shuku, please share. Chapter 314. This article contains Chapter 314 of Cataclysm. If you like Chapter 314 of Cataclysm, please add Chapter 314 of Cataclysm to your collection. Faced with the threat of death, Basara took a deep breath and shook her head. He left after sending me back. I don't know when he'll be back, oh? The orc captain looked at her casually. You mean he'll come back? Basara's expression changed. She was still too inexperienced. From her words, the orc captain sensed that Ron would come back. Library 56. 56 Shuku. She bit her lower lip and didn't speak. What should we do? The orc captain asked one of his subordinates, an orc wolf rider behind him. The orc wolf rider behind him pondered for a moment before saying, Sir, I'm afraid that the human brat who injured young Master Torek has escaped. If that's the case, we won't be able to explain it to Miss Moran. I suggest that we capture that human girl and bring her back. This matter is related to her. After thinking for a short while, the orc captain let out a sigh in a low voice. That's the only solution. Miss Moran is furious now. It's understandable. After all, her cousin was beaten up in her own territory. Given her character, how could she bear it? He shook his head. Miss Moran grew up with Cousin Torek. They've always been very close. I think Miss Moran won't let this matter rest, the orc wolf rider said. If that's the case, we'll take this human girl back and interrogate her. I think we can force out the whereabouts of that human kid. The orc captain nodded. That's the only way. As he spoke, he put two fingers together and waved gently. Capture her. Soon, a few orc soldiers walked up and tied her up with rope. Basara didn't struggle and let these orcs tie her up tightly. Let's go. An orc soldier pulled on the rope and shouted, Wait! At this moment, Theodora walked up quickly and said to the orc captain, Sir, I want to say a few words to her. Say it, hurry up! The orc captain said impatiently. Theodora nodded and walked to Basara's side. He reached out and gently stroked Basara's face. He sighed and said, Silly child, why are you so stubborn? Basara smiled bitterly. Aunt Theodora, he saved me. I'm sorry, sigh. Theodora heaved a forlorn sigh. Her experience told her that Basara would never come back. I'm leaving, Auntie Theodora. Please take good care of Kay for me. Basara bit her lips and said as if she was leaving her last words. Kay was her younger brother's name. I will. Theodora nodded. Basara was escorted away by a few orc wolf riders. When she turned around, her eyes were filled with reluctance. Theodora and the Romani gypsies could only watch as Basara was taken away. Some of the women started sobbing in low voices. It was already evening when Ron excitedly returned to the gypsies' camp with the potions. What's going on? Ron was stunned when he saw the gypsies' camp. The entire ground seemed to have been run over by something. It was uneven, and there were messy footprints everywhere. The tents were also tilted, and all kinds of items were scattered all over the ground. Dozens of gypsy women were packing up with their heads lowered, and the other readers were reading. What's going on? Where's Basara? Where did she go? Ron pulled the gypsy woman and asked. Hearing the name Basara, the gypsy woman's body trembled. She turned around and glanced at Ron. Her mouth moved, but she did not answer Ron's question. Instead, she broke free from him and turned to leave. What's going on? Ron was puzzled. He scratched his head and was about to ask someone else. At this time, a voice came from behind. Are you looking for Basara? Ron looked back and saw a middle-aged woman standing behind him, her face full of grief. Yes, I'm looking for her. May I ask where she is? Ron asked anxiously. He had a bad feeling in his heart. The middle-aged woman looked at him and did not answer his question. Instead, she asked, "You're Ron, right? You know me?" Ron was a little surprised. "By the way, did Becerra tell you about me?" "Yes, I'm Ron. I just went to buy medicine for her." The middle-aged woman was Theodora. Ron was shocked after a short conversation with her. What? She was taken away by the orc army? Ron's eyes widened. In an instant, his eyes were filled with murderous intent. At this time, the large group of orc-wolf riders that roared past flashed in his mind. In an instant, Ron understood everything. He angrily clenched his fist. "So it's like this. It's my fault, forget it." Theodora painfully closed her eyes. Becerra was taken away willingly. From the beginning to the end, she never revealed your whereabouts. Thinking of Becerra's innocent and charming face, Ron fiercely clenched his teeth and made a decision in his heart. This medicine is for her little brother Kay. Give it to him and he'll wake up in 2 days. Ron stuffed the medicine into Theodora's arms. After a few simple instructions on how to use it, he turned around and left. Theodora held the medicine in her hand and was stunned. "Where are you going?" "Pornographic novel, I must save her." Ron's slightly immature voice came through the night breeze. At this time, he had used the Shadowmas spell to walk far away. Thorny Flower Castle was not far from the outskirts of Sandtower City. The castle was heavily guarded, like a fortress. Not far from here was the encampment of the Beastman Empire's Wolf Riders. In 15 minutes, the Wolf Riders would arrive. Ron used the crows to search for more than 3 hours before he found this place. Through the human servant here, he found out that the captured human girl was imprisoned in the dungeon. Of course, Ron couldn't help but use some violent methods. After knocking out the pitiful human servant, Ron used the Shadowmas spell to follow the path he pointed out and arrived at the dungeon of the Thorny Flower Castle. Avoiding the guards of the dungeon, Ron followed the long staircase into the dungeon. It was dark, damp, and from time to time, a big round rat would crawl across the floor. On the wall, the dim magic lamp shone weakly, as if it would go out at any time. Ron frowned. He couldn't imagine that a delicate beauty like Becerra would be imprisoned here and suffer. She must have suffered a lot. Ron sighed in his heart and blamed himself. It's all my fault for implicating her. What a good novel. 1, 2, 3. Little, wrong. Big, you lost. Drink. At this time, a loud noise came from a corner of the dungeon. Ron saw that a few human guards were shouting loudly. They were playing a game called Dice. Whoever lost would drink. They drank until their faces and ears were red. One of them was already drunk on the table. Guarding the dungeon was a lowly job. In the Beastman Empire, only humans would do it. Beastmen disdained to do it. Shadowmas spell. Seizing the opportunity, Ron's body turned into mist and disappeared into thin air. One of the guards looked back strangely with a slightly drunk gaze. "What's wrong?" Another guard asked. "Did something just pass by?" That guard said, "I don't think so." Another guard laughed and said, "I didn't see anything. I think it's because you drank too much that your eyes blurred." The third guard laughed. "Why do you care so much? How could someone come to such a remote place like the dungeon? Come, let's continue drinking. Maybe my eyes are blurred." The first guard murmured. Ron ran all the way like a gust of wind. Soon, he arrived in front of the prison that the servant had told him about. Looking from the prison, Ron saw a young girl sitting there with the help of the weak light. Her clothes were ragged and her head was buried deep in her knees. He couldn't see her face. Ron was overjoyed when he saw her. He hurriedly called out in a low voice, "Becerra? Becerra! I'm here to save you!" The girl heard the voice and suddenly raised her head. When she saw Ron, she was stunned. Ron was also stunned. The girl was wearing ragged clothes but had a pair of bright and clear eyes. Unfortunately, she wasn't Becerra. She was a complete stranger. Ron was stunned. What's going on? Didn't that guy say that Basara was brought here? The servant had only said that he saw a girl being brought to the dungeon, but he didn't know who she was. What made Ron stunned was that when the girl saw Ron, her eyes were filled with joy. She suddenly stood up and rushed to the bars of the prison. She happily said, "Big brother Ron, why are you here?" Big brother Ron? Ron felt that his brain wasn't enough to process all of this. He had snuck into the Thorny Flower Castle in order to save a girl, but he never thought that he would meet another girl. Just when he thought that he had found the wrong person, this girl actually recognized him. The girl in front of him looked to be around 15 years old. Her figure was a little thin and weak. Her long hair was casually draped behind her head. Her hair was messy and her face was dirty. He didn't know how long it had been since she last washed her face, but her eyes were like bright stars. Her face was filled with joy. "You know me." Ron looked at the girl's face in front of him and quickly searched his mind. However, he couldn't match her. He could only ask, "Big brother Ron, don't you remember me? I'm Rainey." The girl in front of him hurriedly said, "In the border city of the Holy Roman Empire, Asinaris. You saved me." Rainey? Asinaris? He finally remembered. Ron finally remembered. When they were at the Holy Empire's border city, Asinaris, Rainey was bullied by a few aristocratic youths, and he saved her life. The other readers were reading. He didn't think that he would meet her again in the Orc Empire. Since it was someone he knew who was locked up here, Ron didn't hesitate to save Rainey. This prison couldn't stop Ron. He casually waved his bone spear and broke a big hole in the prison made of steel. "Big brother Ron, did you come specially to save me?" Rainey asked happily after she came out of the prison. Ron shook his head. "No, I didn't even know you were here. I came here to save another girl." "Oh!" Rainey nodded her head slightly in response. At that moment, she was like a frightened deer, tugging at the corner of Ron's shirt as if she was afraid that he would run away. Her eyes were full of attachment. "Oh right. Did you know that another girl was brought here today?" Ron thought for a while and asked. He wanted to find out about Basara's whereabouts. Rainey shook her head blankly. "I don't know. I've been locked up here for 2 days. I don't think anyone was brought in these 2 days. If that's the case, then Basara isn't locked up here." Ron's mind raced as he pulled Rainey along. "Let's go. We'll talk after we leave this place. Go to Library 56 if you want to see advertisements." 56 Shuku, please share. Chapter 315. This article contains Chapter 315 of Cataclysm. If you like Chapter 315 of Cataclysm, please add it to your collection. When Ron brought Rainey out of the Thorny Flower Castle, one of the guards coincidentally opened his eyes. He saw 2 silhouettes flying past him at lightning speed while the other book friends were reading. What's that?" The guard woke up from his deep sleep because he had to pee. Otherwise, he would have slept until the next morning. When he saw Ron and Rainey, he was shocked. He rubbed his eyes to make sure he wasn't seeing things before he let out a deafening scream. Someone escaped from prison. Following his scream, it reverberated throughout the entire dungeon. In an instant, every guard in every corner of the dungeon was alarmed. "Damn it!" Ron cursed harshly in his heart. He knew that he had been exposed. At that moment, his eyes were filled with murderous intent. Tisk! A bone arrow pierced through the guard's throat. It went straight through his neck and nailed him to the wall. The guard's face was filled with shock. At that moment there was a big hole in his throat. Blood was gushing out from it. Finally, he fell to the ground unwillingly. "Quick, where are they? Kill him, kill him! Don't let him escape!" The few guards hollered and rushed out with their weapons. As they drank too much, their footsteps were unsteady, making them look comical. "Go to hell! In for a penny, in for a pound!" Ron raised his hands, and 2 streaks of black aura surged out from his sleeves. Very quickly they became two bone spears. Under the dim light, the sharp spears reflected a cold light. Brother Ron. Looking at the few burly humans in front of her, Rainey couldn't help but worry. Could Brother Ron defeat them? At that moment, Ron's low voice sounded beside her ear. Follow me and rush forward. Don't care about anything else. Oh, yes, Rainey was very obedient. She was like that in Asinaris and here. At that time, she listened to Ron's words and left immediately. One good thing about Rainey was that she knew what she could and could not do. She did not want to bring trouble to others. Reality proved that Rainey's worries were unnecessary. Ron's body turned into a ball of black fog and suddenly darted out. Swish, 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 the two bone spears danced like venomous snakes. In the blink of an eye, Ron had already launched 7 or 8 attacks. Every attack was aimed at the opponent's fatal spot. Soon, deep bloody holes appeared on the throats and chests of the guards. All kinds of screams reverberated in the narrow dungeon. The guards looked at their wounds in disbelief and fell down with their heads held high. The other readers were reading. They didn't even see how Ron did it until they died. Fast, Ron's speed was really too fast. His Shadowmas technique had been cultivated to an extremely high level, and his speed was much faster. Big Brother Ron, you're amazing! As Rainey ran, she praised from the bottom of her heart. Even though she was young, her speed was not slow at all. She ran as fast as she could. In her young heart, she had long treated Ron as her closest kin. When she was at her most desperate and helpless, he was like a god that descended from the heavens and saved her twice. "Haha, this is nothing," Ron said humbly. At the same time he asked, "Oh, right? Rainey, how did you get caught and brought here?" "I don't know either." Rainey slowed down her pace so that she could speak more fluently. "Not long after I came to the Orc Empire, I was targeted. Then, after I was caught by those despicable orcs, I was locked up here." Ron was shocked. "In that case, you don't know what happened?" "Yes, they didn't ask me anything." Rainey tilted her head as she said. Ron muttered to himself. He felt that there were many suspicious points in Rainey's words. For example, with her identity as a beggar, the orcs wouldn't have caught her for no reason. She was locked up here for 2 days without any questions. Everything was very strange. However, there was no time to ask her now. Dozens of human guards appeared in front of Ron on the stairs, blocking his way. "How dare you? You actually dare to behave atrociously in Thorny Flower Castle?" One of the guards shouted out in a righteous and stern voice. "Kill him, don't let him escape." Another guard said fiercely. Ron snorted coldly. As he ran, he raised both of his hands, and a white fog surrounded his palms. In an instant, as if something had frozen, the temperature in the dungeon dropped by 10 degrees. A cold light flashed across Ron's eyes. His 10 fingers spread out like flowers. Frost Nova. Pip 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 pip. Above the stairs, an extremely cold chi continued to spread upwards. Very quickly, the entire staircase was frozen, along with the guards. The entire staircase was covered with ice, and in an instant, the entire corridor became bright. The guards' faces were filled with fear. They didn't expect the intruder to be so powerful. "I can't move. Oh my God, who can save me? Go to hell?" Unable to find Basara, Ron was burning with anxiety. He vented all his anger on the guards, and his left hand tightened. Boom! There was a huge explosion in the corridor. The bone-piercing cold air poured into the entire dungeon and swept up to the entrance of the cave. The strong and sturdy door was also overturned by the strong cold air. In the explosion, dozens of human guards were all dead. Broken limbs were scattered all over the floor, and there was fresh blood everywhere. Looking at this cruel scene, Rainey was stunned. Her legs were so weak that she couldn't walk. She almost vomited the food she ate last night. Ron couldn't care less. He pulled her and said, "Don't look at anything. Follow me." Rainey nodded and rushed out with Ron. Phew! We're finally out. After rushing out of the dungeon, Ron was about to heave a sigh of relief when a metallic sound rang. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. At this time, Ron and Rainey suddenly realized that they were surrounded by a dense group of orc warriors. Orcs. There were orcs in front of them. Their eyes were filled with murderous intent as they stared at them like a pack of wolves staring at two pitiful lambs. Brother Ron, Rainey was completely frightened. Her petite body couldn't stop trembling as she tried her best to hide behind Ron. In the face of so many orcs, Ron was still relatively calm. He took a deep breath, and the two bone spears in his hands turned into a cloud of black fog and disappeared. Immediately after, his right hand reached for the space bag at his waist and took out the legendary orange staff. At this time, a huge figure suddenly walked a few steps forward and said to Ron with a sinister smile, "Ron, I didn't think we'd meet again. It's you?" Ron frowned. The person who came was both expected and unexpected. The person who came was Torek. At this time, his body seemed to be fine. The leg that was exploded by Ron's frost nova had also returned to normal. He stared at Ron like a venomous snake, his eyes full of hatred. "Hee, you didn't expect me to recover so quickly, did you? However, this is still because of your kindness. If not, how could I taste the feeling of having my leg broken?" Torek's eyes were filled with hatred. Seeing this situation, Ron's heart also relaxed. He knew that since things had already reached this stage, there was no point in being afraid. He smiled and said, "You're right. You should be thanking me. This kind of feeling isn't that easy to taste. Bastard." Torek was so angry that his face and neck were red. He was provoked by Ron and almost wanted to attack. Just as he took a step forward, he suddenly realized that he was no match for this guy. He stopped in his tracks and laughed coldly. "You're about to die, and you're still trying to win a battle of words. Don't you see that my orc army has already surrounded you two puny humans? Let me tell you, you won't be able to escape today. Puny human, this is the price you have to pay for offending the Orc Empire's golden family. Hee, come on." Ron smiled coldly, his eyes filled with a strong desire to fight. "Let me tell you, we necromancers are the least afraid of numbers. Kill him for me." Torek felt that he had been insulted. He flew into a rage out of humiliation and ordered the orc army to charge forward. "Wait!" Ron shouted and stopped him. "Hee, are you going to say your last words? Well, I'm willing to give you a chance. Say it," Torek said with a grim smile. After calming himself down, Ron asked in a calm tone, "Let me ask you, where is Basara?" Hearing Ron's question, Torek was slightly stunned. After a moment, he laughed wildly. "You mean that human gypsy? Ha ha! You're about to die, and you're still thinking about a whore who has been raped by thousands of men." Torek laughed so hard that tears flowed out of his eyes. He stopped laughing and said, "All right, I'll be merciful and tell you that I've already killed that bitch. I don't even know how many strong orcs have F***ed her body. Hee, I still remember that she kept calling out your name before she died. Go to hell." Ron's anger was finally provoked. His eyes were filled with killing intent. He pointed the orange staff in his hand, and a black soul force instantly erupted. For a moment, the black fog around Ron suddenly dispersed. "What kind of magic is that? I can't see anything." "Be careful of that kid escaping." The black fog covered Ron's body. When the orcs saw this, they shouted and waved their weapons, ready to pounce. The black fog gradually dispersed, revealing the things inside. Rows of skeleton warriors stood in neat rows in front of everyone, as if they were soldiers waiting for orders. There were at least a few hundred of them. Torek was stunned. All the orcs were stunned. They couldn't think of how these skeletons suddenly appeared here. What are these things? Kill! Ron's eyes turned blood red. Before the orcs could react, he commanded the undead army to attack. Under his feet, on the blackened ground, an endless stream of skeleton warriors were crawling up from the ground. Chapter 316. If you like the Cataclysm 316 chapters, please collect the Cataclysm 316 chapters. Kill! Ron's eyes were blood-red. The orange legendary weapon in his hand pointed forward. Under his order, the Skeleton Legion launched an attack like a flood breaking through a dike. Kill! Torek roared, and the Beastmen army obeyed his command and charged towards the skeleton army with weapons in their hands. The cold moonlight shone on the Thorny Flower Castle. In front of the Thorny Flower Castle's prison, a soul-stirring battle was taking place. Both armies were attacking crazily, and the warriors at the back rushed forward with all their might. Their sharp swords reflected the cold moonlight, and it was extremely cold in this silent night. The Beastmen warriors were indeed a race that was more outstanding than humans. They were born with innate strength, and as they grew older, their battle prowess also increased, leaving humans far behind. The Beastmen's innate strength was best demonstrated in battle. The Beastman warriors swung their huge axes and cut a skeleton warrior in half, turning it into a cloud of black smoke and disappearing. Only the skeleton warriors were barely able to resist the Beastman warriors' attack. Kill! 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 Deafening battle cries reverberated in the silent night. The Orc warriors had achieved a one-sided victory. Seeing Ron's skeleton army being compressed into a small area, a smile finally appeared on Torek's face. That kid is dead for sure tonight. What a good novel! Rainie's face was filled with fear at first, but when she saw that Ron was actually able to block so many Beastmen's attacks, her brows relaxed, and her eyes were filled with admiration. The battle started off smoothly, but the Beastmen gradually felt that something was wrong. There were continuous screams, and some Beastmen warriors were forced to withdraw from the battle due to their injuries. On the other hand, the number of skeletons on the other side was increasing, and it was as if there was no end to them. Every time a Beastman warrior was chopped down, more skeleton warriors would pounce on them like ants gnawing on an elephant. Damn, these skeletons are so strong. Ah, I'm injured, my arm. Be careful. These skeletons are not easy to deal with. The Beastmen began to panic, and they all started to shout. At this time, they finally understood that a human dared to come to the Thorny Flower Castle without any backing. What happened? Torek also felt that something was wrong. His face was very ugly. If this continued, the hundreds of orcs that he had brought with him would all die. Even if he went all out, he probably wouldn't be able to end the battle. Torek was not stupid. He could tell at a glance that Ron was the culprit. He pointed his finger and shouted, "Ignore those skeletons, kill the summoner first." When the Beastman warriors heard this, they suddenly understood. Why bother with those undead skeleton warriors? As long as the summoner was killed, everything would be over. The Beastmen understood. They roared and pounced on Ron. Sharp giant axes, huge swords, and all kinds of weapons were raised high. Ron sneered. "You only thought of it now? Haha, let me tell you, this is useless to me." As soon as he finished speaking, he tapped his magic staff lightly. A black soul power gushed out crazily as if it had substance. At this time, a six-pointed star array suddenly appeared on the ground. Within the array, a trace of extremely terrifying power shot out. It was a good novel. Thick armor, ice-cold spears, huge skeletal horses, and those pitch-black eyes without any life or expression were enough to shock people. Black Knights, the strongest undead that Ron could summon. Ron summoned 3 Black Knights in one breath. Not long after, under the shocked gazes of the Beastmen, they appeared in front of everyone. Ice Frost Armor. Ron cast Ice Frost Armor on the Black Knights. The Black Knights' bodies were covered in a thick layer of ice, and their defense was even more powerful. All the Beastmen warriors were stunned. This terrifying undead was completely different from the skeletons from before. It emitted a powerful and terrifying aura. "Kill them!" Ron commanded the Black Knights to attack the Beastmen warriors. Boom! The Black Knights and the Beastmen warriors collided fiercely, and the Beastmen warriors were sent flying and fell heavily into the crowd. Ever since Ron advanced to become a mid-level sorcerer-necromancer, the Black Knight's strength had increased tremendously. Their bodies had become bigger, and their strength had increased. Moreover, they could use some battle technique. These battle techniques allowed the Black Knight's strength to increase by another level. Under the attack of the 3 Black Knights, the Beastmen warriors were beaten back. At this time, the number of skeletons beside Ron had reached 1,000. With a huge advantage in numbers, Ron began his counterattack. How is this possible? Seeing the brave Beastmen warriors being beaten to a pulp, Torek was stunned. Ron, this necromancer that had never appeared before, made him feel fear. "Brother Ron, you're so supportive." Rainey's eyes were full of little stars, and her face was full of worship. Ron smiled and patted her head. "Hide behind me obediently and don't move. I'll be back soon." Rainey nodded obediently. Ron's gaze gradually turned cold as he locked onto Torek. Ever since he knew that Basara had died in the hands of this beastman, Ron had already wanted to kill him. Thinking of Basara's innocent and charming face with a hint of maturity, Ron's heart was filled with killing intent. His body turned into a black fog and gradually disappeared. Torek felt as if he had been targeted by something. A familiar and terrifying aura suddenly appeared in front of him. Ron's figure suddenly appeared in the black fog, carrying a deep murderous intent. "Don't kill me." Torek was a little flustered. He had already been scared out of his wits by Ron's strength. When he saw Ron pouncing towards him, he turned around and tried to escape. However, before he could take a few steps, he heard a swoosh sound and a skeleton-like cage tightly trapped him. "Do you think you can run?" "Let me tell you, you're going to die today," Ron said coldly. He stretched out his hand, and a long bone spear appeared in his hand like a magic trick. Die? Ron's gaze was filled with killing intent. He raised the bone spear in his hand high and was about to stab it down. "Stop!" At this time, a delicate voice was heard. It was extremely ear-piercing in the silent night. Hearing this voice, all the Beastman warriors trembled, as if they had heard an order from their superior. One by one, they stopped attacking. "Who is it?" Ron was a little puzzled. He turned around and saw a Beastman woman in strange clothes standing there arrogantly, looking at him coldly. Ron's gaze focused. He saw that the Beastman woman was wearing a loose robe that dragged on the ground. The robe was filled with strange black patterns. She held a wooden staff in her hand. It was different from all the magic staffs Ron had seen before. The staff was thick and looked extremely heavy. The most eye-catching thing was that the Beastman woman had a face similar to that of a human woman. She had delicate features and an angry face. Not only was she not as ugly as the Beastman man, but she also had a trace of heroic spirit. She was tall, half a head taller than Ron, and only a little shorter than Torek. Her entire person was filled with a wild and healthy beauty. "Miss Morin." The Beastman warriors looked at the woman with reverence and saluted. The Beastman's salute was a little strange. They placed their weapons in front of their chests and saluted the Beastman woman called Morin. Ron also ordered all the skeleton warriors to stop. He sized up the Beastman woman and said, "Who are you? Witch doctor or shaman?" Ron knew that the Beastmen didn't have magicians or priests, but they had two professions that humans didn't have: witch doctor and shaman. Witch doctor could heal the injured and had the same abilities as priests, while shaman were similar to magicians. They had some strange abilities that humans would find inconceivable. Ron wasn't sure about her profession, so he asked this question. The other readers were reading. This knowledge came from the Balarax Academy's library. From the looks of it, reading more books was still beneficial. The Beastman woman sized up Ron and slowly replied, "I'm a great wizard." "What? A great wizard?" Ron was shocked when he heard this. A great wizard was a master-level expert. Seeing that this woman was so young, but she was already a master-level expert. Ron's heart became heavy. The witch doctors of the orcs were divided into witch doctor apprentices, witch doctors, sorcerers, great sorcerers, holy sorcerers, and even the legendary divine sorcerers. Of course, there were no more holy wizards in the Beastman Empire. Great Wizard Morin came from the Tauren tribe. She was talented, but she was already a great wizard at a young age, a master-level expert. In the foreseeable future, she could even break through the sacred domain and become a holy wizard. She came from the Golden Family, which was an important existence in the Beastman Empire. However, Ron didn't intend to show weakness. He sneered, so it's the Honorable Great Wizard. But what I want to ask is, what right do you have to order me to stop? Ron's tone was full of provocation. Great Wizard, and pornographic novel. How about it? Ron am not scared. Great Wizard Morin's expression was calm. She smiled and said softly, "Is this enough?" As she spoke, she waved her hand, and a woman who was tied up was brought out. Ron's heart skipped a beat. That woman was Basara. Her mouth was stuffed with a rag, and her tears were flowing. When she saw Ron, she was happy. From Basara's clothes, there were no signs of her being abused. The other readers were reading. Ron was relieved and said coldly, "Let her go." Great Wizard Morin didn't say anything. She just snorted and waved her hand to order them to let her go. The Beastmen didn't dare to disobey. Although they looked at Ron with anger, they still followed Great Wizard Morin's order and let her go. Seeing how Great Wizard Morin let Basara go so easily, Ron was a little shocked. He became more alert. He lifted his bone spear slightly and untied Basara's bindings. He also took the rag out of her mouth. "Ron!" Basara's eyes were full of gratitude. Just when she was about to say something, Ron gestured to stop her. "Don't make a sound. Let's talk outside," Ron whispered. He looked at Great Wizard Morin, and with a thought, the bone prison opened and let Torek go. Torek returned to Great Wizard Morin and whispered, "Cousin." He then looked at Ron with hatred. Great Wizard Morin stared at Torek fiercely. Torek lowered his head and didn't dare to look at her eyes. "Is there anything else?" Great Wizard Morin turned to Ron and asked calmly. Since they were in the orcs' territory, Ron did not intend to pursue the matter any further. He thought for a while and laughed. "Thank you, Great Sorcerer Emolan. I think we should be fine now. Let's forget about today's misunderstanding. Goodbye." After he finished speaking, he held Rainy's hand in one hand and Basara's hand in the other and prepared to leave. Just when Ron was about to leave with the two girls, Morin said coldly, "You want to leave?" Chapter 317. If you like the Cataclysm 317 chapter, please collect the Cataclysm 317 chapter. As expected, Ron knew that although Great Wizard Morin was easy to talk to, she would not let them go so easily. The other readers were reading. Library 56. 56 Shuku. He stopped in his tracks, turned around, and said coldly, "What else do you want?" Great Wizard Morin looked around and saw the injured orc warriors. She sighed and looked at them coldly. "Now that I've returned them to you, do you think you can just walk away after hurting them?" Ron looked around. Sure enough, the orc warriors that surrounded him were all injured, but he didn't know if any of them had died. The other readers were reading pornographic novels. They were reading, "What else do you want?" Ron smiled coldly. "If you didn't catch Basara, I wouldn't be here. If you didn't hurt Torek, I wouldn't have sent people to catch you." Morin insisted. She pushed all the blame onto Ron. Ron didn't want to explain too much, so he looked at Torek and said with contempt, "That's because he's not as good as I am." Torek's face was red. He was so angry that he couldn't speak. Even if she was a master, Ron didn't give her any face. He smiled and said, "Great Wizard Morin, you can do whatever you want. Or we can continue fighting until we have a result." As soon as he said this, Great Wizard Morin's face sank. The atmosphere suddenly became tense, and the temperature in the air dropped to freezing point. In the hearts of all the orc warriors, Great Wizard Morin had a high status. When they saw Ron provoking her, many of them were furious. However, without Great Wizard Morin's order, they didn't dare to act rashly. It was obvious that Great Wizard Morin had a lot of prestige in their hearts. Ron had a smile on his face, but he was even more vigilant in his heart. He held the legendary staff tightly and looked like he was about to devour someone at any time. Great Wizard Morin's beautiful eyes wandered as she stared at Ron. After a while, she let out a sigh. Fine, fine. She held the staff in her hand and muttered something under her breath. Not long after, her hand emitted a strong golden light. While she was chanting, a pillar-like object appeared on the ground with a swish sound. Ron looked at the pillar and saw that it was covered with mysterious patterns. It was constantly emitting a gentle light, and as the light spread out, all the beastmen in the surroundings had happy expressions on their faces. She's healing. Ron saw that the wounds on the beastmen were quickly healing. It wasn't just one, all the beastmen within the range of the light received the same treatment. The beastmen's spells are really not simple. This was the first time Ron saw the beastman's healing method, and he felt that it was an eye-opener. Just from this alone, the beastman's witch doctor was much more powerful than human priests. Although priests also had group healing, there was a limit to the number of people they could use. Healing Guard. This was a unique healing method of the beastman's witch doctor. Compared to the healing spell of human priests, each had its own advantages. The healing spell of a priest was a one-on-one healing spell, and the healing effect was fast and obvious. The healing guard of a witch doctor was a group healing spell, but the effect was relatively weaker. Of course, after reaching the level of a great wizard and a great Guangming priest, their healing spells would complement each other. For example, the group healing spell of a great Guangming priest and the healing wave of a great wizard would make up for the shortcomings in this aspect. Not long after, under the blessing of Great Wizard Morin's healing guard, all the beastmen warriors were basically healed. Thank you, Great Wizard. Thank you, Miss. The beastmen warriors thanked Great Wizard Morin one after another. Great Wizard Morin sighed and waved her hand. You can all go now. Yes, miss. The beastmen warriors didn't dare to disobey and turned to leave after bowing. Torek hesitated for a moment. Cousin, you can go too. Morin gently waved her hand. But Torek was about to say something, but he looked at Ron. He was worried about his cousin's safety. Morin's face suddenly darkened. Go. Do you think you haven't brought me enough trouble? After hearing Morin's scolding, Torek withered like a frosted eggplant. He glared at Ron fiercely and turned to leave unwillingly. Seeing Morin's attitude, Ron's heart relaxed. He waved his hand, and all the undead creatures turned into a cloud of black smoke and disappeared into the air. Great Wizard Morin looked and smiled meaningfully. Very interesting undead magic. No wonder the Holy Sea is chasing after you, what? Hearing Morin's words, Ron was shocked. He suddenly became nervous and said coldly, You know me? Facing Ron's murderous gaze, Morin completely ignored it. She smiled and said, To be able to kill a powerful being from the sacred domain with the strength of a master, and to be able to use powerful undead magic. Other than Ron, who was in the limelight during the meeting, I can't think of anyone else who can do this. As long as you want to investigate, you can find out in an instant. Ron had already protected the legendary staff in front of his chest. His face was full of coldness, and there was a trace of intense killing intent in his eyes. He said in a deep voice, What do you want? Great Wizard Morin chuckled. Her pretty face was like 100 flowers blooming at the same time. Even among the orc women who were known for their beauty, she was still one of the best. What a good novel. Don't be so nervous. I just want to make a deal with you. This deal has great benefits for both you and me. What deal? This time, it was Ron's turn to be confused. He had never met this orc woman before, so there was no possibility of a deal. Great Wizard Morin did not directly answer Ron's question. Instead, she smiled and said, "I don't think this is a good place to talk. How about we talk in the hall?" Ron hesitated for a moment and thought about it before agreeing. He was also curious. "Please." Great Wizard Morin made an inviting gesture. If other orcs were to see this scene, their jaws would definitely drop. When had the noble Great Wizard Morin ever done something like this? She was clearly treating him as an equal, and he was a human. In the spacious corridor, Great Wizard Morin led the way in front. Ron, Rainey, and Becerra followed behind. The two of them had a worried look on their faces. Each of them grabbed onto the corner of Ron's shirt, unwilling to let go. It was as if holding on tightly to Ron's shirt would give them a sense of security. Ron walked in the middle. He thought about the cause and effect of the incident, and the more he thought about it, the more he felt that there was a conspiracy. He suddenly raised his head and asked coldly, "You kidnapped Becerra to lure me out. Before that, you already knew of my existence, didn't you?" Hearing this, Great Wizard Morin's body obviously paused. After a while, she turned back and said lightly, "That's right. After seeing Torik's injuries, I felt that your strength was too strange. Also, your fighting style did not belong to any profession in the continent of Noah. Plus, the few human mercenaries' statements basically confirmed your identity. They said that you were the one who brought them out of the plains of despair." "So that's how it is," Ron muttered to himself. He was not surprised that the Waves mercenary group knew about his background. He did not have any relationship with them in the first place, so there was no need for them to hide it for him. Then, what's the matter with Rainey? Ron thought about it and asked, "Rainey? Is it the other girl beside you?" Morin smiled. "Haha, I'm sorry. I still don't know her name. However, she was caught here because she was involved in another transaction. This has nothing to do with you, so you don't have to ask." Although Morin was unwilling to say, Ron did not ask further. However, no matter what, Rainey was still a friend that he met once. As long as he was around, he would definitely not hand Rainey over. After hearing Morin's words, Rainey lowered her head. Her eyes shone brightly, and no one knew what she was thinking. "We're here." When they arrived at a large hall, Morin smiled and gestured for them to enter. "Please come in." When they reached the central hall of the Thorny Flower Castle, Ron found a chair and sat down. Morin sat in the middle. Ron pointed at the chairs beside him, indicating for Rainey and Becerra to sit down. However, they refused, and Ron had no choice but to let them stand behind him. Not long after, a human maid served a delicate cup of black tea. When they saw Miss Morin treating a human with such high standards, they were shocked. Morin did not say anything. She picked up the teacup and took a sip. Ron's finger tapped lightly on the chair. He said lightly, "Great Sorcerer Morin, you seem to like making deals with people. Just call me Morin." Great Sorcerer Morin smiled gently and put down the teacup. "A deal? Not bad. I really like making deals, especially win-win deals." Ron imitated her and picked up the teacup and took a sip. He tried to calm himself down and asked, "From your tone, you seem to want to give me some benefits?" "That's right. The other book friends are reading." Morin nodded. "And I don't think you can refuse. Tell me about it." Ron put down the teacup elegantly like a noble and leaned back on the chair. Becerra's heart skipped a beat. She immediately leaned over and pinched Ron's shoulder. Rainey was stunned for a moment. Then, she leaned over to Ron's right shoulder and pinched it as well. Ron smiled bitterly in his heart as he enjoyed the two's service. It was as if he did not ask them to do this. Morin acted as if she did not see Ron's endless luck with women. She said lightly, "You were chased by the Council's law enforcement team. Although you managed to escape, you hid everywhere like a mouse and did not dare to appear under the sun. This is your current situation, Ron. Am I right?" Ron's gaze froze and his body tensed up. Morin's words made him think of many things. He thought of the council, the Holy See, and Grandpa Hamelin. His face darkened, and his hands gripped the chair so tightly that they turned white. Morin smiled. The council represents the highest power in the Noah continent. Its decision cannot be overturned. From another perspective, this has already sentenced you to death. Although Morin's words were harsh, Ron could not deny this fact. He took a deep breath. You already know. What else can I say? Or perhaps, I can save my life by making a deal with you. Morin smiled and raised her head. Her eyes were brimming with confidence. She said loudly, "That's right." Ron raised his head. His eyes were filled with shock. What did you say? 56 Shuku, please share. Chapter 318. The content of this article is Cataclysm 318 chapter. If you like Cataclysm 318 chapter, please bookmark it. Ron stood up and stared at the great wizard Morin. You're saying that you have the ability to change my current situation? I'm just saying that it's possible, but it's very likely. Morin smiled. For some reason, I know a little more than you, she continued. In the council, the confession of the people from the Holy See doesn't play a decisive role. The one who really has a decisive role is another person. Who is it? Ron's curiosity was completely piqued by her. The other book friends were reading. Library 56. 56 Shuku. The great wizard Morin smiled and deliberately paused for a moment. He's the strong man from the Beaumont clan in the Kingdom of Warcraft, the Beaumont Behemoth. Hao Qin, Hao Qin? Ron heard this name for the first time. He lowered his head and his mind was spinning rapidly. Morin continued, although I don't know how you offended the powerful and tyrannical Beaumont clan in the Noah continent, this matter was undoubtedly caused by him. The people from the Holy See don't have the ability. The Beaumont clan, Ron thought for a while and finally remembered Omega. He had only fought with the Beaumont clan once, so there was no doubt that it was her. This meant that Omega and Meng Qin had a close relationship. The other book friends were reading. After taking a deep breath, Ron nodded and admitted, "Yes, I do have a grudge with the Beaumont clan." He raised his head and looked at the great wizard Morin. "If that's the case, in the vast Noah continent, there's no place for me at all. But from what you said, it seems that I still have a chance to turn things around?" "That's right." Morin smiled and nodded. She was very satisfied with Ron's intelligence. She cleared her throat and said loudly, "Although the Noah continent is in the hands of the Council, most people don't have the power to make decisions. Only a few people have real power," Morin said. "They are the 7 divine realms of the Noah continent. Among them, the dragons have 2 seats, the chairman and vice-chairman respectively. Beaumont has 1 seat, Vice-Chairman Hao Qin." She paused for a moment. "Among the 7 divine realms, the elves have 1 seat, and we, the orcs, also have 1. That is the beast god of the orcs, who is also my grandfather, the Tauren god of war. Strength." "Strength?" Ron was shocked. He seemed to know what Morin was going to say. He said with some excitement, "You mean, strength can solve my current problem?" Morin nodded approvingly. "My grandfather is one of the 7 divine realms of the Noah continent. He is also a senator of the council. As long as he is willing to say a word for you, he can naturally overturn the council's decision. In the worst-case scenario, within the territory of the Beastman Empire, his word is enough to save your life." Ron listened carefully, but his heart was extremely shocked. From the words of the great wizard Morin, he heard a lot of secrets, and these were things he had never heard of before. Slightly lowering his head, Ron's eyes flashed. He looked up and said, "Are you sure you can say that strength can help me?" Mullins smiled faintly. "I don't have absolute certainty, but as his most beloved granddaughter, I think my words are still effective. Moreover, this isn't a big deal. It's just that this matter involves Lord Hao Qin, so it's a bit troublesome, I see." The other readers are reading. Ron finally understood what the great wizard Morin meant. He looked up and took a deep breath. This proposal is indeed tempting, but I don't think there is a free lunch in this world. I think, in order to do this, the price I have to pay may not be low, right? Smart. Mullen slapped her thigh as she stood up and chuckled softly. I like dealing with smart people the most. Ron, since you can think of this, it shows that you're a smart person. That's right. Nothing comes without a price. This is the deal I'm talking about. Tell me. What do you want me to do? Ron knew it was not that simple. Although he was a little tempted, he said in a low voice, "As long as it is within my ability, I can consider." Morin smiled and said slowly, "Actually, it's not a big deal. You just need to participate in a competition. This competition is called the Battle of the Strongest." Battle of the Strongest? Ron was stunned. "Of course, you have to get a good ranking." Morin added, "What is the Battle of the Strongest?" Ron did not understand what the Battle of the Strongest meant, but he felt that this competition was not that simple. "Haha, I almost forgot to tell you." Morin smiled and said, "The full name of the Battle of the Strongest is the Battle of the Strongest in the Orc Empire, or the Battle of the Strongest. As the name suggests, the participants of the Battle of the Strongest are mainly young people. The competition is mainly conducted in a one-on-one manner. It is held every 4 years, and the age of the participants is limited to 23 years old and below. Haha, this year the rules are relaxed. It is now 25 years old and below. In other words, anyone under 25 years old can participate, whether it is a human or an orc. Not only that, sometimes even magical beasts can participate. By the way, the age limit of the Battle of the Strongest is very strict. We have professionals to test the real age of the participant. So, don't try to change your appearance or use magic items." She looked at Ron and said, "Of course, age is not a problem for you." Ron's age was 18 years old. No matter how they tested him, there would be no problem. The other readers were reading, "The Battle of the Strongest?" Ron thought for a while and was a little tempted. The Battle of the Strongest was not only because of the protection of the Orc God's Realm Master, but also because he could challenge all kinds of masters to increase his strength and combat experience. These were the real treasures for Ron. He remembered that Merlin's grandfather had said that powerhouses grew through constant battles. At this time, Ron needed to fight, and all kinds of battles. Seeing that Ron was a little tempted, Morin continued to encourage him. "Participate in the Battle of the Strongest. As long as you enter the top 10, you will get everything that everyone dreams of. Status, money, power, these are not a problem. If you enter the top 5, you will receive rich rewards and will be able to meet my Grandpa Li Jia. If you enter the top 3, in addition to all the above, you will also receive personal guidance from my Grandpa Li Jia. If you enter first," Morin paused and said slowly, "you can also make a request of him." Hearing this, Ron understood. This request was to let Grandpa Li Jia speak up for him in the meeting and remove his kill order. But would it be so easy to get first place in the Battle of the Strongest? Ron knew that in the Battle of the Strongest, he would definitely meet a lot of young geniuses. The challenges he would face would definitely not be easy. "To be honest, I didn't plan to look for you at first." After telling Ron about the Battle of the Strongest, Morin slowly leaned back on the chair and narrowed her eyes. "However, our Thorny Flower tribe of the Tauren tribe hasn't been ranked in the Battle of the Strongest for many years. Every time, let alone the top 3, we can't even get into the top 10. Because of this, there are a lot of opinions in the tribe. If this goes on for a long time, I won't be able to continue being the chieftain. So, Ron, I want you to represent my Thorny Flower tribe in the Battle of the Strongest. As long as you get into the top 10, I will try my best to persuade my grandpa to remove your kill order in the meeting. Ron, although you are very strong, it is impossible for me to place all my hopes on you. This time, my Thorny Flower tribe will send 2 beastmen to fight with you. One is a beastman warrior, and the other is a beastman wolf knight. Including you, that makes 3. Ron, I hope that all of you can return with a good ranking. Do I have any other choice? Ron muttered to himself for a while and finally sighed. All right, I agree. Seeing that Ron had agreed, a smile finally appeared on Molin's face. What a good novel. At this time, Ron looked at Morin and said, Great Wizard Morin, can I ask you a question? Ask away, Morin said with a smile. Since Ron agreed to participate in the young master's tournament, she had already treated Ron as one of her own. Ron carefully looked at Morin. Great Wizard Morin, I see that you are very young, but your strength has already reached the master rank. You don't look like a 25-year-old. If you have such talent, why don't you participate in the young master's tournament? When Morin heard this, her face blushed. She snorted and said reproachfully, Ron, you are asking about a lady's age. This is not a polite thing to do. After scolding Ron, Morin's face returned to normal. She nodded and said, That's right. I just turned 25 this year. According to the rules of the Young Masters Tournament, I can participate, but, although we are both healers, the witch doctors of the beastmen race are a little different from the priests of your human race. Our witch doctors are not good at fighting, unless they reach the saint level. If I had the combat power of your human race's great radiant priest, do you think you would have a chance to participate? From a certain point of view, Molin was indeed a prodigy. Pornographic novels, even in the Orc Empire, it was rare for someone to become a master-level powerhouse before the age of 25. Unfortunately, she was a witch doctor. As she said, unless she reached the sanctuary level, which was the level of a holy wizard, she would not be a match for someone of the same level. Other readers were reading. I understand. Ron also stood up. I will participate in the Young Masters Tournament and try my best to get a ranking. At the same time, I hope you will not forget your promise to me. Very good. Molin nodded her head in satisfaction. She sat down, yawned and said, It's already late, you should go back and sleep early. From today onwards, you are a member of my Thorny Flower tribe. And you can stay in the Thorny Flower Castle. I will find someone to arrange it for you. Before the Battle of Shaochang, I will give you the same treatment as the other two beastmen. Ron smiled slightly. He turned around and looked at Rainey and Basara. Then, Morin immediately said, Torik's matter is over. You can take Basara away. As for that girl, looking at Rainey, Morin paused. However, when she saw the determined look on Ron's face, she immediately changed her tone. That's not a problem. She was originally involved in a deal between me and some humans. As long as I capture her and hand her over to them, they will give me a generous reward. However, now that I think about it, their reward is not as much as what you can give me. Besides, I don't lack money, Morin smiled. All right, you can take them away. I think you will need 2 maids as well. If you are willing, you can take them as your maids. The 2 orcs that are participating in the tournament have at least 10 human maids by their side. Although Morin did not say it, Ron could roughly guess what those maids were for. Of course, he would not do those things to Rainey and Basara. You can go back. Someone will make the arrangements for you later. I'm tired. Morin stood up and stretched her body. Her innocent look was extremely alluring. She was a beauty through and through. Ron did not dare to look any longer. He immediately lowered his head and bowed. Softly he said, Goodbye. 56 Shuku please share. Chapter 319. If you like the Cataclysm 319 chapter, please collect the Cataclysm 319 chapter? Ron, Rainey, and Basara were led to a room by the human maid in the Thorny Flower Castle. The door to the room was tightly shut. From the decorations and materials of the wooden door, the door alone was worth a fortune. The decorative patterns on the door gave off a sense of art. The other readers were reading. The human maid pushed the door open and walked in. Then, she stood aside. The moment Ron entered the room, he was stunned. The entire room was divided into a few halls. Every hall was extremely spacious. The decorations in the room were extremely luxurious and artistic. One look and one could tell that it was the work of a high-level human craftsman. The room was covered with a thick carpet. Ron couldn't bear to stand on it. Not only Ron, but even Rainey and Becerra were stunned by the luxurious room. They stood there in a daze. "Young Master Ron, this is where you rest," the human maid said respectfully. She had also changed the way she addressed him as young master. Hearing the maid's words, Ron recovered from his shock. However, the word young master from the maid made him feel uncomfortable. He felt as if he had become an aristocrat. "All right, you may leave." Ron retracted his gaze from the room and waved his hand. "Yes, young Master Ron," the maid replied. Then, she continued, "However, young Master Ron, don't you need me to serve you?" Everyone knew what serve meant. The maid raised her head. She had a pretty face and a voluptuous figure. She looked at Ron with a hint of passion. A strong young man like Ron who could gain the favor of Miss Morin was naturally the ideal partner in the hearts of the maids. Ron was slightly stunned. Before he could reply, Becerra interrupted. "No need, you may leave. We are young Master Ron's maids. He is not used to being served by others." As she spoke, she took a step forward and shielded Ron behind her like a little chick. When Rainey saw this, she also stood up and puffed out her chest. She was afraid that this woman would eat her big brother Ron. As if he had eaten her. Seeing their actions, Ron was a little helpless. He coughed lightly and said, Well, you'd better go out. They can serve me. Yes, young Master Ron." The maid couldn't hide her disappointment. She bowed and turned to leave. After the maid left, Becerra immediately closed the door. At this time, Ron smiled bitterly and said, "Becerra, Rainey, actually, you don't have to do this. In my heart, you are all my friends. I have never treated you as—" Becerra and Rainey looked at each other, their cheeks blushing. Rainey lowered her head and gently played with the corner of her clothes. Becerra was bolder. Her face was red as she said, Young Master Ron, as long as you don't mind, Becerra is willing to be your maid for life." "Maid for life?" Ron smiled bitterly in his heart. He was a stray dog who was chased to the ends of the earth. How could he have two beautiful and cute maids? Perhaps one day, when he was chased, he would have to abandon them and run away. Just as he shook his head and was about to reject, Becerra gave Rainey a look. Rainey understood. She walked to Ron's side and acted coquettishly. She shook Ron's arm and said, "Brother Ron, you've worked hard for the whole day. You're so dirty. Go wash up." Without waiting for Ron's consent, she pushed him to the bathroom. Ron had no choice but to follow. When he pushed open the bathroom door, he was greeted by a huge pool. The pool was steaming hot, and large amounts of steam were coming out. The entire bathroom looked gray and hazy. The other book friends were reading. Two girls were laughing and playing around, yelling about taking off Ron's clothes. This was the maid's job. Being teased by the two cute girls, Ron was like a shy boy. He loudly protested, I can do it myself." The two girls did not force him. After playing around for a while, they walked out. Hearing their footsteps go further away, Ron then heaved a sigh of relief. He took off his clothes and walked into the pool. His whole body was soaked in the warm water, and it was very comfortable. Ron's body leaned against the wall of the pool. He closed his eyes and was very satisfied. The hot water could relieve fatigue. After a while, Ron gradually fell asleep. After an unknown period of time, Ron heard the sound of water. He opened his eyes slightly and saw an unfamiliar woman appear in his line of sight. Her entire body was immersed in the water, her face was flushed red, and she was extremely embarrassed. Ron was shocked. He jumped up and suddenly realized that he was not wearing any clothes. He immediately squatted down, blushing. "Who are you?" "Brother Ron, don't you remember me?" The girl's face was so red that it looked like water was about to drip out. She said shyly, "I'm Rainy." Ron composed himself and then recognized Rainy. It was not his fault. Rainy had always looked like a dirty little beggar in front of him. Suddenly, she was washed away, revealing a delicate face. Her clear eyes were as bright as the sky. It was no wonder that Ron did not recognize her at first. "Ha ha." Ron touched his nose awkwardly and said embarrassedly, "I can't even recognize you after you take off your clothes." Once he said that, the bathroom became even quieter. An awkward and charming atmosphere wandered in the room. At that moment, Ron wanted to give himself 2 big slaps on the face. Who asked him to speak without thinking? After hearing Ron's unintentional words, Rainy wanted to find a hole to hide in. She blushed and said angrily, "Brother Ron, you're so naughty." "Ha ha." Ron laughed awkwardly. At that moment, a pair of slender hands reached out from behind and gently massaged his temples. Ron raised his head slightly. The scene in front of him almost made him have a nosebleed. Becerra was almost completely naked. She was only wrapped in a bath towel, revealing her almost perfect figure. Due to her long-term dance practice, her waist was slim and did not have a trace of fat. Even though Becerra was not old, her body was as developed as a ripe peach. Under the tightly wrapped bath towel, a bottomless cleavage was revealed. Due to the rising steam in the bathroom, Becerra's face was red. She seemed to understand Ron's thoughts and leaned on him. "No. Becerra, you." Ron was almost dizzy from this sudden encounter. Just as he was at a loss of what to do, a soft body leaned on him. Ron looked and saw that it was Rainy. Being pincered by the 2 girls, even if Ron had the greatest ability, he could not use it. He could only let them do whatever they wanted. On the spacious bed, Rainy and Becerra snuggled tightly against Ron. Ron hugged their delicate bodies and fell asleep together. That night they felt extremely fulfilled. Early the next morning, Ron opened his eyes and felt around. However, the 2 girls were nowhere to be found. Ron was the only one lying on the huge bed. Where did they go? Ron suddenly jumped up. He touched the brocade blanket that still had some warmth and went into a daze. Hugging 2 beautiful girls to sleep the whole night, Ron still felt a little ashamed. Even though they did not do anything, some intimate actions could not be avoided. Just as Ron was in a daze, a graceful girl pushed open the door and entered. She was holding some snacks on a tray. Ron looked and saw that it was Rainy. At that moment, Rainy had changed into a set of houseware that looked like a maid's. She looked extremely energetic. Her developing chest was slightly raised like a green apple, and her eyes were as bright and clear as gemstones. It was Ron's first time seeing Rainy like this. He was a little shocked and could not help but take a few more glances. Rainy was embarrassed by Ron's stare. She put down the tray in her hands. Her face was as red as an apple and was about to drip water. She blushed and said softly, "Brother Ron, what are you looking at?" "I'm looking at you." Ron smiled. "I didn't expect you to be so beautiful, Rainy." Rainy's face was already red to her ears. She said coquettishly, "Brother Ron, I brought you breakfast. Eat something first." Ron replied and walked to the luxurious table. He picked up a pastry and said, "Eat, you eat too." "I've already eaten," Rainy said sweetly. She took the opportunity while Ron was eating breakfast to reach out and massage Ron's shoulders. Ron sighed. "Rainy, actually, you don't have to do this. I've never treated you as a maid, Brother Ron, I know. Last night, I discussed it with Sister Becerra. Anyway, we don't have anywhere to go. As long as you don't mind, we're willing to serve you," Rainy said softly, her head almost touching her neck. Ron sighed in his heart. There was nothing he could do about the 2 girls' stubbornness. He thought for a while and asked, "Oh, right. Where's Becerra?" Rainy paused. Sister Becerra went out after she woke up in the morning. She said she was going back to see her brother. Ron nodded when he thought of the unconscious boy who was poisoned. It was no wonder that Becerra was worried. He wondered how he was and if he had woken up. Just then, there was a commotion outside the room. Ron and Rainey felt strange. They looked at each other and walked quickly to the window to look outside. A strong and boorish beastman warrior was holding a girl's hand tightly, not letting go. He laughed lecherously as he dragged her into the room. The girl struggled with all her might, begging and pleading. However, she couldn't resist the strong strength of the other party. Ron could tell that the girl was Basara. She was wearing a maid's uniform, and her face was full of tears. There were a few maids beside the beastman warrior. They were pulling him and saying something. Rainey exclaimed, "It's Sister Basara. She seems to be in trouble." Ron's anger was ignited in an instant. His face was as black as the bottom of a pot. Without saying a word, he turned around and went downstairs. "I'm Lord Ron's maid. You let go," Basara said with a red face. Lord Aojiao, this is a guest of Thorny Flower Castle. You can't do this," one of the maids said anxiously. The beastman warrior called Aojiao laughed out loud. "Ron? Who is Ron?" "I'm an elite warrior representing Thorny Flower Castle in the tournament. Who does he think he is? Let's not talk about him. Even if Miss Morin came and I asked for this maid, would she not give it to me?" As he spoke, he hugged Basara. Human beauty, quickly come to my room. I'll treat you well. As long as you serve me well, you can have as many gold coins as you want." Aojiao's mouth was full of filthy words, but his pair of perverted hands reached towards Basara's full breasts. At this time, he suddenly felt a gust of wind behind his head, and a white spear-like thing flew towards him. Chapter 320. The content of this article is Cataclysm 320 chapters. If you like Cataclysm 320 chapters, please add them to your collection. Aojiao was shocked. However, he was an elite warrior selected by the Thorny Flower tribe. His reaction speed was quite fast. He tilted his body backwards and dodged the attack that was coming towards him. At the same time, he let go of Basara's hand. The other readers were reading the book. Library 56. 56 Shuku Who dares to sneak attack me? Stand out for me. Aojiao's good mood was instantly destroyed. He flew into a rage out of humiliation. "It's me." Ron's eyes narrowed as he slowly walked out. His face was cold and expressionless. From this guy's words, it wasn't hard for Ron to guess that this guy was the beastman warrior that represented the Thorny Flower tribe to participate in the Battle of the Strongest. When Basara saw Ron, she immediately cried and ran over. She hid behind Ron's back as if she was scared to death. At this moment, Aojiao had already noticed Ron at the side. He was stunned. Human. Aojiao was also surprised that a human male appeared in the Thorny Flower Castle. Moreover, this human's status wasn't low. A human actually dared to sneak attack me? After seeing Ron, Aojiao's face darkened. He felt that he had to teach this arrogant human a lesson. He asked, "Who are you?" Ron nodded and said indifferently, "I am Ron." Aojiao's eyes narrowed. "You are Ron." He sized up Ron and snorted. "Miss must be blind. She actually found a human to participate in the Battle of the Strongest. Is there something wrong with her brain?" Aojiao took a step forward, an ominous glint in his eyes. "Human brat, you have guts. You actually dared to sneak an attack on me. Accept your punishment. This is the price you have to pay for your audacity." As he spoke, he let out a loud roar and took out a one-handed giant axe from his hand. A dark golden light slowly flowed on the giant axe. Since they were going to participate in the Battle of the Strongest, Molin had given all the contestants the highest grade of weapons and equipment. Without saying anything, Aojiao raised his giant axe and slashed towards Ron. This attack wasn't to take his life, but to show his strength. Ron snorted. Facing Aojiao's attack, he didn't retreat. Instead, he chanted an incantation. Not long after, A giant bone shield formed in the black fog and blocked in front of Ron. Since he had advanced to become an intermediate Archmage necromancer, the strength of the bone shield had greatly increased. Even an extremely hard dark gold weapon would not be able to easily break through the solid defense of the bone shield. Boom! The giant axe landed on Ron's bone shield. The shield only shook a little. Under Aojiao's shocked gaze, Ron began his counterattack. A white light flashed and Aojiao felt a sharp pain in his body. A gust of wind blew past his ears. Then, he fell heavily to the ground, his mouth full of mud. Ron's speed was so fast that he didn't even see how the other party attacked. How is this possible? Aojiao was shocked and angry. Being defeated by a human was the biggest humiliation in his life. He could be defeated by anyone, but not by a human. Aojiao was originally a wandering beastman mercenary. He had the strength of an advanced warrior. He wandered to the Thorny Flower tribe and had a conflict with Morin in a tavern. He single-handedly injured a few of the Thorny Flower Guard's wolf riders. In the end, he was subdued by a large group of beastmen. After knowing Aojiao's age, he didn't receive any punishment. Instead, he was treated as an important guest by the great Magus Morin and represented the Thorny Flower tribe in the tournament. With a roar, Aojiao pressed his thick hands on the ground. He stood up and prepared to counterattack with his giant axe. At this moment, he stopped. He didn't know when, but a venomous snake-like bone spear was pressed against his vitals. If he moved, his throat would be pierced. The cold bone spear flashed. Aojiao broke out in cold sweat. He could feel the fear of death from his opponent's murderous gaze. You dare to kill me? Aojiao had never been in such a situation before. Although he tried to remain calm, his trembling voice betrayed his thoughts. What the great Magus Morin needs is a strong warrior who can help her win the tournament. With your strength, you obviously don't have that qualification. I think it's better for you to save her some trouble. Ron laughed disdainfully. Aojiao's actions just now had provoked his killing intent. As he said that, he raised his bone spear and stabbed towards Aojiao's throat. Aojiao didn't think that Ron would really dare to attack him. A big hole appeared in his throat and blood spurted out. Ron pulled out his bone spear and Aojiao's huge body slowly fell. Before he fell, his eyes were filled with unwillingness. The screams of the human maids could be heard in every corner of the Thorny Flower Castle. Seeing Aojiao fall, they panicked. Stop! At this moment, a figure hurriedly ran over. It was Morin. Her appearance was very timely. She was flustered and exasperated. Ron, you actually dare to kill my people? Ron smiled coldly and arrogantly. With his strength, he will also be killed in the battle between the young and strong. If he dies at my hands, there will be no yellow novels. What's the difference? Aojiao's body was limp on the ground. The wound on his throat caused by Ron's bone spear was hard to heal. Blood kept flowing out of his throat and his life force was quickly fading away. It seemed like he wouldn't be able to live for much longer. Morin slowly raised her head and snorted. Ron, you are too daring. You actually dare to kill someone in my Thorny Flower Castle? Ron laughed coldly and didn't reply. Emolan took a deep breath. She clasped her hands together and formed a strange shape. Then, she began to chant in a low voice. Not long after, a ripple of energy flowed out from her body and flowed towards Aojiao. Aojiao's body trembled as he frantically absorbed this strange energy. Not long after, his body was as good as new. Thank you, great Magus. Aojiao immediately got up and thanked Morin sincerely. Morin's healing wave was very timely. If it was a moment later, he wouldn't be able to save himself. Luckily, Morin saved him at the last moment. You can leave first. Morin waved her hand and said, Yes, great Magus. Aojiao replied and turned around to leave. He didn't want to stay here any longer. Before he left, he looked at Ron with hatred, but there was also a trace of fear in his eyes. Ron smiled. He already knew that Morin was hiding at the side. He believed that Morin wouldn't ignore Aojiao's death. This was a test. Both sides were testing each other. Looking at Ron's arrogant face, Morin was defeated. She gave up the idea of teaching him a lesson and sighed. Life in the Thorny Flower Castle isn't bad, right? Seeing that she didn't pursue the matter, Ron's face revealed a victorious smile. He nodded and said, "Not bad. The Thorny Flower Castle is a very good place. My life here is like heaven. If possible, I really want to stay here for the rest of my life." Morin snorted coldly. "This is the treatment you deserve for participating in the Battle of the Strongest. If you can get a good ranking in the Battle of the Strongest, you will get more. If you can't, I will kick you out of the castle. The Thorny Flower Castle doesn't keep useless people." Ron shrugged his shoulders indifferently. Morin's heart was filled with helplessness towards Ron. This human was strong, but at the same time, he was arrogant and unruly. As a human from a lower race, he didn't have the heart to respect a higher-ranked beastman. This was completely different from the submissive humans she had met before. This made her gnash her teeth in hatred. From her point of view, a lower race should have the consciousness of a lower race. Morin glared at Ron after she finished speaking. 3 months later, the Beastman Empire's Battle of Life and Death will be held in the capital, Zuma. You must prepare well. Don't throw away my Thorny Flower Tribe's face. Otherwise, I won't let you off so easily. I got it. Ron smiled faintly. He turned his head and held Rainy and Basara's hands as he said, "Come, let's go back." After he finished speaking, he ignored Morin and left without looking back. Looking at Ron's back, Morin was so angry that she clenched her teeth. She couldn't wait to call the strong people in her tribe over and teach him a lesson. She would only feel great when she saw him kneeling on the ground and begging for mercy. This thought gnawed at her like a devil. Morin herself didn't know why this thought would appear in her mind. Due to her status and strength, she had many suitors around her. However, she had never treated a man nicely before. Yet, she was so concerned about a human. Morin also felt that this thought was ridiculous. She shook her head. It seemed that she had been under too much pressure recently. At this time, a Beastman soldier walked to her side and said, "Miss Morin, this guy is too arrogant. Do you want to, don't?" Before the Beastman soldier could finish his sentence, Morin had already screamed in shock. Looking at the Beastman soldier's hesitant gaze, Morin also felt that she had overreacted. She took a deep breath and calmed herself down. Slowly, she said, "Before he participates in the Battle of the Young Masters, no one can touch him. If he doesn't get a place in the Battle of the Young Masters, I'll teach him a lesson then." Morin's eyes revealed a trace of sternness. "What's going on?" In Ron's rather luxurious room, on a large bed in the corner of the side room, Ron held the hand of Basara's brother, Kay. His brows were tightly knitted and his face was solemn. According to Basara, Kay had already taken the antidote that Ron bought, but it didn't seem to have any effect. He was still unconscious. "Young Master Ron, my brother, can he be saved?" Basara was a little worried about her only brother. It had been a few days, and Kay was still unconscious. She was almost about to cry. Ron sighed. "I don't know either. Logically, the antidote should have taken effect. But now, not only did it not take effect, but it has also worsened." Ron was simply at his wits' end when it came to Kay. He had thought of almost everything, but he was still unconscious. At this time, the silent Rainy gritted her teeth and said, "Sister Basara, let me see." As she spoke, she walked forward and reached out to tear open Kay's pants. After holding it for a while, she frowned. "This isn't an ordinary poison. It's the poison of a Krite. 56 Shuku, please share. Chapter 321. Full text with no ads? Ron and Basara looked up in shock, as if it was the first time they met Raindrop. Then Ron asked, Raindrop, you can get sick? A little. Raindrop was a little embarrassed and shyly lowered her head. My father was a pharmacist. I learned a little from him. So that's how it is? Ron nodded. What about your father? He felt strange. Since Raindrop had a father, why did she still wander around? Hearing Ron mention her father, Raindrop's eyes turned red. She bit her lips and tried not to cry out loud. She choked and said, He's gone. Ah, sorry. Ron heard and felt guilty. I'm sorry for bringing up your sad past. It's nothing. Raindrop wiped her tears. It's all in the past. Basara gently patted Raindrop's shoulder and comforted her. After a while, Basara asked, Raindrop, can Kay be saved? Raindrop tilted her head and thought for a while. It's a little troublesome, but I just need to buy some herbs and remake the antidote. Ron stood up. There's no time to lose. Let's go buy the herbs now. Saving a life is more important. Raindrop, I'll go with you. Raindrop smiled and nodded. Okay. Those herbs that are not too expensive, I think we can buy them in Sand Tower City. Basara also wanted to go, but she was rejected by Ron. Remembering that Kay also needed to be taken care of, Basara could only stay at Thorny Flower Castle. Full text with no ads. Ron brought Raindrop and walked on the streets of Sand Tower City. Ron felt strange. He had a feeling that he was being watched by someone. He suddenly stopped and turned back. He did not find anything. Brother Ron, what's wrong? Raindrop stopped and asked. Nothing. Ron shook his head. Maybe he was thinking too much. Not long after, Ron and Rainy arrived at a place that sold medicinal herbs. You, honorable guest, how can I help you? Once Ron and Raindrop entered, a middle-aged uncle welcomed them and asked with a professional smile. You, uncle, I want to buy these herbs. Do you have them here? Raindrop passed the list of herbs over. There's also a list. The middle-aged man in the medicine shop took the list and went through it line by line. Not long after, he looked at Raindrop in surprise. These are all antidote herbs. Sister, did you write this prescription? Towards the middle-aged uncle's question, Raindrop smiled but did not answer. She only asked, Uncle, do you have enough medicinal herbs here? I want to buy all of them. Seeing that she didn't answer, the middle-aged man didn't force her. Instead, he smiled and said, Yes, yes. It's just that one or two of them are more expensive. The middle-aged man said kindly. He looked at the two teenagers who were still like children and felt that they didn't have much money on them. It's fine if it's expensive. Bring them over immediately and pack them up. I need them urgently, Ron said impatiently. The feeling of being watched was getting more and more intense. There was no basis for it. It was just a feeling. Ron believed that his intuition wasn't wrong. Ever since they left the Thorny Flower Castle, they had been followed. After paying the money without hesitation, Ron took the purchased herbs and walked out of the door quickly under the middle-aged man's astonished gaze. Ron and Rainy walked on the main road. Neither of them spoke along the way. Brother Ron, this doesn't look like the way back to the Thorny Flower Castle. Rainy was pulled by Ron in the opposite direction. Seeing that the road was getting more and more remote, she asked in confusion. Don't ask anything. Don't say anything. Just follow me closely, Ron said softly. Noticing Ron's serious expression, Raindrop obediently replied, She followed Ron and walked forward step by step. She had an inexplicable trust in Ron. Ron brought Rainy and slowly walked into a forest. This was already a very remote outskirt. The forest was very big. When the wind blew, the leaves rustled. At this time, Ron finally stopped. He slowly turned around and said indifferently, Everyone, you have been following us sneakily for so long. It's time to come out and meet us. Someone was following them? Hearing that, Rainy immediately became vigilant. She quickly hid behind Ron. She felt that this was her safest harbor. Ron's gaze focused. Not long after, there was a sound from the bushes in the forest. More than 10 human men walked out from the bushes. The leader, a bald man, cursed, "Son of AB***, you actually found us." More than 10 human men were dressed like mercenaries. The leader, a bald man, had a fierce look on his face. He was staring at them fiercely. Ron's eyes narrowed slightly. He sized them up one by one. "Who are you guys? Why are you following us?" Ron's heart was secretly alert. He guessed that they were his enemies. They were most likely people from the Holy See. "Don't waste your breath," the bald man said gruffly. "Son of AB***, you have no right to ask about this. Hand over the child beside you, and we will let you go." While the bald man was talking, more than 10 other people slowly surrounded them. They surrounded Ron and Raindrop in the middle so that they could not escape successfully. "What? You guys are here for Rainy?" Ron was a little shocked. These people were actually not looking for him. A wandering beggar could actually fall sick and concoct an antidote. When Ron thought of Rainy, he felt that she was full of suspicions. She was not as simple as a beggar. He cast a questioning look at Rainy. "Big brother Ron, save me." Rainy grabbed the corner of Ron's clothes. Her eyes were full of pleading. After all, she had concealed her past and lied to Ron first. She was afraid that Ron would abandon her and leave without a care for her. Ron nodded. Of course, he would not do that. Although Rainy was suspicious, he would definitely be on Rainy's side. "Sorry, she is my friend. I will definitely not hand her over to you." Ron's statement was straightforward, leaving no room for negotiation. "What, you actually dare to go against us?" When the bald man heard this, he became furious as if he was pricked by a needle. "Son of AB***, you must be tired of living." He pulled out a long sword from his space bag and roared, "Go, let's chop him up together." Yes. More than 10 human men pulled out their weapons one after another and approached the two with a sinister smile. "Kill!" The bald man was the first to pounce. He raised his long sword high and greeted Ron. The bright mirror-like sword reflected Ron's calm face. Raindrop was behind him. Ron could not take a step back. He waved his hand, and a bone shield appeared in his hand out of thin air. Clang! After blocking the long sword in the bald man's hand, Ron raised his right hand at lightning speed. The black gas in his sleeve suddenly expanded. Bang! The black gas turned into a sharp boned spear and pierced deeply into the bald man's abdomen. Blood flowed out from the corner of the bald man's mouth. His face was full of shock. His unwilling eyes widened as he pointed at Ron with a trembling finger. From the beginning, he had inquired about Ron's identity. However, he did not know everything. He only knew that he was a necromancer. It was because of this that he underestimated his opponent's strength. The other 10 human men were preparing to rush forward. When they saw this scene, they were stunned. Ron's speed was too fast. They could not even see his movements. How is this possible? Isn't he a necromancer? How could he kill the captain? A human said in horror. "Monster. He's a monster." Another human man could not take it anymore and turned to flee. The bald man was their captain and the strongest among them. Even he could not block a single move from the other party. One could only imagine how strong the other party was. As long as one had a brain, they would not think that it was a pornographic novel. He was the opponent of the other party. The bone spear dripping with blood was pulled out of the bald man's body. His body slowly fell down. Ron's face was as calm as an ancient well. He looked at the others. After returning from the plains of despair, Ron's heart had become as firm as a rock. He would not hold back against the enemies who wanted to make a move on him. Ron had a cold smile on his face. His figure turned into a black fog and gradually disappeared. "Ah, don't kill me!" Terrified screams could be heard everywhere in the forest. Not long after, all the sounds returned to silence. After a while, Ron walked back with big strides. The black robe on his body was not even stained with a trace of blood. As there were crows scouting in the sky, everyone who followed Ron could not escape the fate of being killed. Walking in front of Raindrop, Ron smiled. The trouble is solved. Let's go. Raindrop did not move. She bit her lips and lowered her head. She did not dare to look Ron in the eyes. After a while, she said softly, "I'm sorry, Brother Ron. I lied to you. It's nothing." Ron smiled magnanimously. "Everyone has their own secret. I have never asked you to tell me anything." Ron's magnanimity made Raindrop feel ashamed. She raised her head boldly and looked into Ron's eyes. She said softly, "Brother Ron, I am willing to tell you everything. Can you trust me?" Ron smiled and nodded. He patted Raindrop's head. "I have never blamed you. I have a lot of trouble on me, and I am not afraid of any trouble. However, if you are willing to tell me, perhaps we can deal with everything in front of us better." Looking into Ron's sincere eyes, Raindrop gritted her teeth gently. Actually, I come from a pharmacist family in the Holy Roman Empire." "Pharmacist family?" Ron's face showed a trace of surprise, but it quickly returned to normal. If that was the case, it could explain Raindrop's ability to concoct potions. Ron frowned slightly. "Who were those people just now? Although I don't know them, I have a rough idea of who their employer is." Raindrop thought for a while and answered. "If I am not wrong, they are from the Nayan family." Nayan family? Ron was unfamiliar with this name. "They are the same as our Barrow family. They are pharmacist families." Raindrop sighed. "Perhaps the names of these families are not well known, but they sell potions and secretly make a fortune. Their wealth is unimaginable." Ron was not interested in whether they made a fortune or not. He asked, "What I want to know is, why are they chasing after you?" "Because." Raindrop suddenly raised her head. Her clear eyes stared at Ron. "I have the formula for the strength potion in my hands. No advertisement, please. Come to first, please share." Chapter 322. Stamina Potion Formula? Ron was shocked. "Just for a formula?" "Of course." Raindrop nodded. "To a pharmacist family, a complete formula is a priceless treasure. The benefits it brings are limitless." Ron thought of the antidote he bought from the shop. A bottle of it cost 80 gold coins. It was obvious how profitable it was. No wonder the Nayan family tried so hard to get their hands on the stamina potion in Raindrop's hands. Compared to the Nayan family's position in the pharmacist world, our Barrow family is just another family. This stamina potion formula is an important way for our Barrow family to rise. After the Nayan family found out that we had the formula, they tried to get it from my father. My father knew the value of the formula, so of course, he would not give it up. In the end, the Nayan family joined forces with a few other families and sent out experts to attack our Barrow family. At this point, Raindrop was a little sad. At that time, our Barrow family had some strength. There were also a few master-level experts in the Guardian family. Of course, we would not sit still and wait for death. We fought back. However, we did not expect that the strongest master-level experts in our family would be bribed by the other party. Then, at this point, Raindrop started to sob softly. Looking at Raindrop's sad face, Ron could easily imagine the result. Her family must have been killed in this battle. He sighed. "All your family members are gone?" Raindrop nodded. "They are all dead. Only an old servant brought me out," Ron nodded. That old servant was Raindrop's grandfather, who was already dead when he first met her. "So they have been chasing after you?" Ron asked. "Yes." Raindrop lowered her head. "They guessed that the stamina potion formula must be in my hands." "That's right, they guessed it right. Before my father died, he gave me the priceless formula for the stamina potion. So they were looking for me everywhere. I had no choice but to change my name and dress up like a beggar before escaping from the Holy Roman Empire." Ron sighed in his heart. He could guess that the Barrow family wasn't strong enough to protect the strength of this stamina potion formula. That was why they met with such a fate. It was like a child walking on the street with gold. It was easy to attract the attention of others. So, Ron said, your name isn't real either? Rainey nodded her head lightly. Yes, my name is Rosie. Rainey is the name my father gave me. Oh, Ron nodded. At this time, his mind started to work. He remembered that he had used up a lot of his stamina during the battle. If he had a potion that could replenish his stamina at any time, then his fighting strength would become even stronger. At this moment, he hesitated for a moment before asking, Rainey, where is your formula? Here. Once Raindrop heard, she answered without hesitation. She pointed at her head and smiled as she answered. I have memorized it all, that's great. Ron said happily. Raindrop, can you make it? This thing is very useful to me. Ron grabbed Raindrop's hand and shook it gently. Once Raindrop heard it, she hesitated. She thought for a moment before answering. Brother Ron, actually, after our Barrow family got this formula, we have never made it. To be honest, I don't even know if it's real or fake. Never made it before? Then give it a try. How can there be success without trying? Ron smiled and said nonchalantly. But every experiment requires a lot of herbs. This requires a lot of money. Raindrop said softly. Making potions was not an easy task. It was an important and complicated project that required a lot of professional knowledge. Raindrop came from a family of pharmacists, so this was not a problem. However, the most difficult part was the first trial. No one knew how many failures one had to go through from getting the formula to succeeding. No matter if it was a success or a failure, it required a lot of money. Hence, Raindrop was not confident. It's okay. Ron patted his chest and said, I still have some money. I believe it's enough to make the potion. Use as much as you want and make the strength potion as soon as possible, okay? She remembered that making the strength potion had always been her father's last wish. After he got the formula, he got himself into trouble and did not have the chance to make it. After thinking for a while, Raindrop finally agreed. Raindrop revealed her background. Ron was not wary of her at all. The two looked at each other and smiled. Oh right, Raindrop this. At this moment, Ron's heart skipped a beat. Then, he dug into the space bag at his waist and took out the recovery potion that he exchanged with black crystal coins from the mysterious store. It was a purple bottle. This was given to him by Brother Lombard. There was only one bottle. Based on the black crystal coins, this thing was worth a lot. From the moment Ron took out the recovery potion, Raindrop's eyes lit up. She came from a family of pharmacists and could tell the value of this potion at a glance. Just by looking at the energy that leaked out from the bottle, she could tell in an instant that this potion was not simple. Raindrop took the bottle from Raindrop's hand and opened it. She sniffed it lightly. The faint medicinal fragrance passed through her nostrils. Raindrop's face revealed an intoxicated expression. This is... Raindrop's eyes were filled with astonishment. This is the legendary recovery potion, she said happily. Brother Ron, how did you get it? Ron smiled and told her about the black crystal coins and the mysterious store. Finally, he asked, Oh right, Raindrop, can you make this potion? Impossible. Upon hearing this, Raindrop immediately shook her head. She handed the recovery potion back to Ron and said, The bottle in your hand is the best potion in the world. It's called the recovery potion. Even if you're severely injured and on the brink of death, you only need one bottle. Just one bottle of this potion is enough to bring you back from the dead. You'll recover all your physical strength and magic power, and you'll be in your prime condition. The effects of this potion are heaven-defying. If we can make it. Is that so? Ron was obviously disappointed. He knew the effects of this potion. That was why he asked. Raindrop smiled. Even if we have the formula, we can't make this kind of heaven-defying potion because some of the ingredients definitely don't exist in the Noah continent. I remember your mysterious store. I heard from my father and uncles that there's a mysterious place in the Noah continent that sells these heaven-defying potions. Every bottle is priceless. If I'm not wrong, that store's name is Dimension Store. Plain store? Ron's heart trembled for a moment. Yes. Raindrop continued. The potions sold in the Dimension Store come from other dimensions. Then, the ingredients used naturally don't exist in the Noah continent. So even if we have the formula, we can't make the recovery potion. So that's how it is. Ron finally understood the origin of these recovery potions. He thought for a while and finally gave up on this unrealistic idea. He sighed and said, "Forget it, let's go back." Basara must be waiting anxiously. Thorny Flower Castle, Ron's room. Basara nervously looked at Kay, who was on the bed. Her hands were clasped in front of her chest, and she held her breath. Ron was also at the side, quietly watching. Raindrop's face was solemn. She held the transparent liquid that she had just concocted and slowly poured it into Kay's mouth. The liquid entered Kay's mouth, and she absorbed it quickly. Not long after, her face turned from pale to pink with a hint of blood. "It's done." Raindrop smiled satisfyingly and let out a sigh of relief. "That's it?" Basara didn't understand. She hurriedly asked, "Then why hasn't Kay woken up yet?" Raindrop playfully blinked her eyes and said, "Don't worry, Sister Basara. More than half of the poison in her body has been cleared. She will wake up in a while." At this time, as if in response to Raindrop's words, Kay's eyelids trembled, and she gently opened her eyes. She saw Ron and Raindrop, but she didn't recognize either of them. Finally, her eyes fell on Basara's face, and she excitedly called out, "Sister Kay, it's great that you woke up." Basara threw herself on Kay, her body trembling. Kay scratched her head and sat up. "Sister, what happened to me?" Ron smiled and answered, "You were bitten by a kite when you went up the mountain. You were unconscious and couldn't wake up. It was Raindrop who concocted a new antidote that saved you." He pointed at Raindrop beside her. Raindrop tilted her head and grinned, revealing two cute canine teeth. Looking at a child who was about the same age as her, Kay couldn't believe it. "You!" Basara immediately pulled him. "Kay, hurry up and thank her." "Oh." Kay listened to his sister the most. He immediately said, "Thank you. What's your name?" Raindrop smiled and said, "My name is Raindrop. Where is this place?" Kay looked at the luxurious decorations in the room and asked. As a commoner from the gypsy tribe, she had never stepped into a place like this before, let alone slept on such a big and comfortable bed. "This is the Thorny Flower Castle." Ron smiled and answered. In the luxurious hall of the Thorny Flower Castle, a few human men were already waiting. Their expressions were a little anxious. One of them was skinny, with a white face and no beard. His fingers were as delicate as a human's. He wore an expensive and luxurious robe, showing the look of a rich man. He was the master of the Nayan family, Matic. The others were his subordinates, dressed as mercenaries. At this time, a human servant quickly walked over and bowed. "Honorable guests, Sister Morin has arrived." As soon as the servant finished speaking, the great wizard Morin's figure appeared at the door. Today, she was wearing a black outfit with a white cloak, looking very heroic. "Sister Morin! Sister Morin!" When all the human men saw her, they hurriedly bowed. Among them was the master of the Nayan family, Maddox. Chapter 323. The man called Maddox, who looked like a merchant, stood up. He tried his best to remain calm, but the twitching muscles on his face betrayed him. He politely said, "Big Sister Morin, the beginning and the process of our cooperation were very pleasant, and you were also very satisfied with the price we gave you. I just don't know why you suddenly changed your mind." This is something that we are very surprised about. When Morin was in Sand Tower City, these humans found her through some beastmen and asked her to look for a human child in Sand Tower City. The task was very easy, but the price was satisfactory. The task was not difficult. Morin sent out an army to search Sand Tower City and completed the task. This human child was the only successor of the Barrow family. Her name was Raindrop. Just when Morin completed the task and was waiting to collect the money, Ron came to kill her and even saved her, disrupting her plans. On top of that, the matter of the Battle of the Strongest also made Morin have thoughts about Ron. Now, Raindrop was Ron's servant, and Ron was the ranker that her Thorny Flower tribe sent to participate in the Battle of the Strongest. To Morin, nothing was more important than getting a good ranking in the Battle of the Strongest. Under these circumstances, she naturally knew what to do. Thus, her cooperation with Maddox was naturally terminated. Of course, Morin would not tell Maddox about these things. Looking at these humans who kept on pestering her, Morin's face was clearly unhappy. The corner of her mouth slightly curved up. There is no reason. Our cooperation started and ended is very normal. Previously, I was very interested in this matter, but now I am not. I have also returned the deposit that you gave me. We do not owe each other anything. I think there is nothing more to this matter. Hearing Morin's reply, Maddox was a little shocked. Big Sister Morin, is it because of the price that you are not satisfied with? We can still talk about this. As the Patriarch of Named, money was not a problem for Maddox. Morin smiled. This is not a problem of money. Our cooperation has already been terminated. I think I should have the right to decide whether to cooperate or not. Maddox's face showed a hint of helplessness when he heard that. He exchanged glances with the others, then gritted his teeth and steeled his heart. He raised his head and stared at Morin. Big Sis Morin, of course, has the right to refuse to cooperate. However, our target, which is that human child, is in Thorny Flower Castle. I wonder how Big Sis Morin would explain this? When Morin heard this, she decided to act shamelessly. Her eyebrows furrowed, and a trace of displeasure flashed through her eyes. Her expression turned grave and stern. Human, are you spying on my Thorny Flower Castle? Her master ranker's strength was extremely oppressive, causing Marcos to break out in cold sweat. He hastily replied, I wouldn't dare. It's just that my men unintentionally saw her walking out of the Thorny Flower Castle's main gate. They definitely had no intention of spying on the Thorny Flower Castle. If you don't, then so be it. Big Sis Morin coldly stared at Marcos and slowly said, Our Thorny Flower Castle does not have the person you are looking for. So, I believe that you must be wrong. Maddox raised his head. Just as he was about to say something, he was once again interrupted by Morin. At this time, Morin stood up and said impatiently, You guys can leave. This matter ends here. After saying that, she ignored Maddox and the others and left under their astonished gazes. Dong dong dong. Someone knocked on the door. Who is it? In Ron's room, Becerra shouted as she opened the door. When she opened the door, she jumped in shock. She saw Big Sis Morin outside the door. Ah, it's Big. Big Sis. Please come in. Please come in. Becerra did not expect that Morin would personally appear here. She was a little flustered and at a loss as to what to do. She hurriedly invited her in. Big Sis Morin lightly glanced at her and snorted. Why are you so nervous? It's not like you guys are doing anything shameful. Becerra's face was flushed red. She did not dare to talk back, and could only stand there awkwardly. She was wearing a set of dark brown servant clothes today. Half of her chest was sticking out and trembling. Coupled with her charming expression, she looked exactly like a human fairy. What are you so proud of? You're not even as old as me. Morin thought to herself. She did not know why, but she felt dissatisfied when she saw Becerra. Due to their race, Morin was tall and big. She was 2 heads taller than Becerra. Her chest was even bigger. Her entire person was filled with a wild and healthy beauty. This also caused her to have many suitors in the Orc Empire. "Who is it?" Ron slowly walked out of the room. When he saw Big Sis Morin, he could not help but be startled. He did not expect that Big Sis Morin would personally come to his room. At this time, Raindrop also rushed out from the other room. When she saw Morin, she was also startled and hurriedly bowed. Another human fairy. Seeing Raindrop's face that was as pure as water, Big Sis Morin instantly came to a conclusion. "What's the matter?" Ron quickly calmed down and said indifferently. He did not know why, but he was not very fond of Big Sis Morin. In reality, no one would be too fond of being used. Ron and Morin had a relationship of being used and being used. "Nothing." Morin also pretended to be indifferent. She arrogantly lifted her chin slightly and pointed at Raindrop. "There are some humans outside looking for her. Tell her to be careful and not to run around if she has nothing to do. If she leaves the Thorny Flower Castle, no one can protect her." Naturally, Raindrop knew who was looking for her outside. She nodded gratefully. "Thank you, Big Sis." Ron's attitude was indifferent. "Oh, got it. Is there anything else?" Morin thought for a while. Other than this, there seemed to be nothing else. The strangest thing was that she did not know why she was here. It was as if she was sleepwalking. She thought for a long time and finally came up with a reason. She frowned and said, "Ron, the battle of the strongest young masters will be held in 3 months. These 3 months are neither long nor short, but why do I always see you looking like a sloppy person? I don't see you training like a warrior or meditating like a magician. With your training mentality, it will be harder than reaching the heavens for you to get a place in the battle of the strongest young masters in the Orc Empire." She glanced at Basara and Raindrop. "Everyone else is risking their lives to train. Why do you think I asked you to come back? To be lazy and play with people?" After she said that, Basara and Raindrop's faces turned red. Basara grew up in the Gypsy tribe and was influenced by what she saw and heard. However, Raindrop was at an age where she did not fully understand. Her face had already turned red to the tips of her ears. "Oh, the Lich King!" Ron cried out in his heart. Other than sleeping with them at night, he did not do anything to the two of them. However, Ron did not intend to explain this matter, especially to Morin. The more he explained, the more difficult it would be to explain. He coughed slightly. "You don't have to worry about this. Sister Morin, if there's nothing else, please go back. I still have to train." Ron straightforwardly asked her to leave. When Morin heard that, she was so angry that her face turned red. She was livid. "This is my place. Don't tell me you dare to chase me out?" However, when she thought of the battle of the strongest young masters, she immediately suppressed her anger and sneered. "The battle of the strongest young masters is a battle to the death. It's okay if you don't get a place, but if you lose your life, you can't blame anyone else." After Morin finished, she turned around and walked towards the door. When she reached the door, she turned back and saw Basara and Raindrop. In the end, she could not help but say, "Those things are not good for your body. Do you know that?" After that, she did not bother with Ron and turned around to leave. Those things. Ron was startled at first. Then, he understood and smiled bitterly. Basara and Raindrop lowered their heads. Their faces were red and they did not say a word. "All right. Go back to your rooms. I'm going to train." Ron touched his nose and said. Basara and Raindrop responded softly and went to do their own things. Basara had to take care of her brother, Kay, who had just recovered from a serious illness. Raindrop, on the other hand, was concocting the strength potion in the room. Kay's condition was going well. Under Basara's care, he got up day by day. Now, he could barely get out of bed. On the other hand, Raindrop was in a terrible fix. In just 2 days, the tens of thousands of gold coins that she had invested had all gone down the drain. It could be seen how difficult it was to concoct the potion. Raindrop sat in her laboratory. The table was filled with papers filled with unknown symbols. Her slender hand was holding a quill and writing something continuously. Ron was not idle. In order to fight against the strongest, he had entered into a state of training early on. In his mind, a huge soul was floating in the air. That soul's face showed Ron's face. Beneath its feet was a boundless mind filled with an unusually strong soul power. Above Ron's soul, a huge whirlpool appeared in his mind, spinning continuously. Ron knew that on the other side of this whirlpool there was an extremely mysterious and terrifying existence, the Soul Ring. Ron was full of confidence in this battle against the strongest. Not for anything else, but because he had discovered a secret that could make him stronger. Soul incineration. Hamelin had once said that soul incineration could greatly increase one's soul power. At the same time, the price it brought was also unbearable. If it was light, one would become an idiot. If it was heavy, one would become a walking corpse without a soul. Moreover, Ron also noticed that every time he used soul incineration, his soul in his mind was in so much pain that it looked like it was going to split open. He was very worried. He knew that once his soul collapsed, he would be doomed eternally. However, after using soul incineration twice, Ron shockingly discovered that every time his soul split open, a green energy would suddenly appear in the whirlpool connected to the soul ring in the sky. It slowly seeped into his soul, and his soul slowly recovered under this green energy. This was the secret of the soul ring to repair damaged souls. Ron was incomparably excited because he had discovered this secret. If this was the case, didn't that mean that he could use soul incineration without limit? With this thought in mind, Ron risked his soul becoming an idiot and used soul incineration in his room. For a moment, Ron's soul power increased by several times. At the same time, a green energy overflowed from the whirlpool and slowly seeped into his soul, slowly recovering it. In the blink of an eye, more than 3 months had passed. One morning, a knock on the door broke the silence of the morning. Chapter 324. More than 60 luxurious carriages traveled on the wide plain, rolling up a cloud of dust. Each carriage was very large, and 8 people sitting inside didn't feel crowded at all. 6 huge horses pulled the carriages in front, and the mighty fleet of carriages displayed the astonishing wealth of the owner of the fleet. The 3 contestants representing the Thorny Flower Castle each sat in a carriage. Ron and 2 others sat in the same carriage. Other than Big Sister Morin's luxurious carriage, the other carriages were filled with gifts. The entire carriage had a total of 1,000 people, and there was also a large group of Orc-Wolf riders escorting them. Ron sat in the carriage, enjoying the scenery on both sides of the road to his heart's content. Even though he had lived a luxurious life for a few months in Thorny Flower Castle, he still couldn't help but sigh when he saw Molin making such a big scene. Other than Becerra and Raindrop, there was another person sitting in Ron's carriage. That was Becerra's brother, Kay. After Raindrop's treatment, Kay had already recovered. He sat opposite Ron. Perhaps it was because of his personality, but Kay was a little brave. He did not speak much, and he would answer Ron's questions. Most of the time, his pair of brown eyes would look out of the window, and no one knew what he was thinking about. From Becerra's words, he understood that Kay was not her biological brother. A few years ago, she saved him from the river when he was injured. At that time, he was only 12 years old and was almost beaten to death. After Becerra saved him, she treated him wholeheartedly. On the other hand, Kay was chased out of his family and had nowhere else to go. So, he recognized Becerra as his sister and followed the gypsy tribe to wander around, doing some chores in the singing and dancing troupe. After Kay was injured, he stayed in the Thorny Flower Castle with Becerra. Ron was also busy training and did not pay much attention to him. Anyway, Big Sister Morin was rich, and one more person was not a big deal. Seeing that the atmosphere was a little dull, Ron smiled and took the initiative to ask, Kay, you haven't been to the Orc Empire's capital, Zuma, right? Kay glanced at Ron and shook his head blankly as an answer. In the next moment, his eyes looked out of the window again, ignoring Ron. Isn't this kid's personality too introverted? Ron thought in his heart. He looked at Basara, and Basara also looked at him. She smiled and said, Kay doesn't like to talk to strangers. Ron, don't take it to heart. Oh, Ron replied. Calm at this time, Basara sat beside Kay and started talking to him. Strangely enough, when Basara talked to him, Kay's expression became much more relaxed, and even a faint smile appeared on his face. Ron shrugged his shoulders and made a helpless expression. Rainey smiled and came over. Brother Luoen, are you tired? Let me give you a massage. As she said that, she used her slender hands to massage Luoen's shoulders. Raindrop's 10 fingers seemed to be dancing, and the massage made Ron feel very comfortable. He snorted softly and closed his eyes. Raindrop's eyes looked out of the window. After a while, she turned back and looked at Ron worriedly. Brother Ron, I heard that the Orc Empire's young expert's deathmatch is very cruel. Aren't you afraid? Hearing Raindrop's words, Ron's eyelids moved slightly. He opened his eyes and looked at Raindrop's worried expression. He patted her hand lightly and said firmly, being afraid is useless. Since I've decided to participate, then I have to face it bravely. I believe that I won't lose. When he said this, Ron's eyes were filled with strong confidence. Yes, Brother Ron, you can do it. Raindrop's words were filled with encouragement. Ron smiled slightly and closed his eyes again. Before the big battle, he needed to conserve his energy. At this time, the carriage suddenly stopped. The Orc commander's voice came from not far away. Big Sister has ordered everyone to stop and rest. We'll set off in half an hour. Oh, we stopped again. Ron smiled. You guys sit here. I'll go out and take a breather. With that, he opened the door and jumped off the carriage. Ron, do you want me to accompany you? Basara's voice came from the carriage. No need. I want to walk by myself, Ron said. Not long after, a figure appeared by the lake not far away. In the black fog, Ron's body slowly appeared. As the lake water flowed slowly, it was pleasing to the eye. Ron's mood also rose, and the depression from the journey was swept away. He took a deep breath and stretched. At this time, his movements suddenly stopped. His body tensed up as if he was about to fight. He did not turn his head and coldly shouted, Who's there? Come out. Frightened by Ron's words, the fish suddenly sank into the water, and circles of ripples appeared on the surface of the lake. The wind blew past, and there was no one behind Ron. At this time, his brows furrowed, and traces of murderous intent filled the air. Just as he was about to make a move, a faint voice sounded. You're quite alert. You're indeed someone that Big Sister has her eyes on. As he spoke, a figure flashed out from behind the tree. The one who came out was an orc. He had his hands behind his back, and his body was slightly thin. There was a smile on his ugly face. Unlike other orcs, his eyes were lively, and there was an indescribable sense of experience. Ron slightly turned his head, and his eyes narrowed. You are? My name is Taishan. Like you, I'm also a participant representing the Thorny Flower tribe in the Tournament of the Strongest. At the same time, I'm also the vice-captain of the Thorny Flower Castle. The orc named Taishan slightly smiled. You're that orc wolf rider? Ron was slightly surprised. He sized up this Taishan and felt that he was a bit old. This kind of person could participate in the Tournament of the Strongest? Seeing Ron's doubtful gaze, Taishan seemed to know what he was thinking. He slightly smiled. Don't worry. Although my face looks a bit old, I'm really 25 years old. Taishan paused and continued with a smile. The place I came from is the Orc Empire's Sima Gobi. It's a large desert area. In a year, at least half of the time, there's a sandstorm. Staying in this kind of place all year round makes me look older. Ron slightly nodded and immediately asked, "Then why are you following me?" When Tai-Shan heard this, he hesitated for a moment and said, "When Big Sister Morin saw you leave, she ordered me to follow you." When Ron heard this, he was so angry that he laughed. He coldly asked, "She's afraid that I'll run away?" "Yes," Tai-Shan straightforwardly replied. Ron sneered, "If I wanted to run away, I would have run away a long time ago. I don't believe that you can stop me." Tai-Shan carefully thought for a moment and honestly replied, "That's right. Your undead magic is so strange, it shouldn't be difficult for you to run away." Seeing that Tai-Shan was so honest, Ron was a little surprised. However, Ron didn't plan to let him go. He sneered, and with a shake of his hand, a black fog gushed out from his sleeve, forming a white-boned spear. He pointed it at Tai-Shan and sneered, "Since you know about my undead magic, then you should also know that my temperament isn't too good. If you follow me, you'll have to pay a considerable price. And this price, are you prepared?" The white-boned spear reflected light under the sunlight. The black soul power wrapped around Ron's body, revealing traces of murderous intent. Tai-Shan's face was a little serious and he said in a deep voice, "You want to fight me?" "That's right." Ron sneered, "I don't think that there should be too many contestants representing the Thorny Flower tribe in the tournament of the strongest." His gaze turned sinister. "I alone am enough." Facing Ron's arrogance, Tai-Shan laughed, "If you want to fight me, then you can try. However, I have to remind you, I'm not a trash like Aojiao." Aojiao was the contestant that Ron defeated in one move. With a glance, Ron could tell that this wolf knight in front of him was much stronger than that person. Facing the cold bone spear, Tai-Shan's face was as calm as usual. His whole body stood there like a mountain. Tai-Shan's calmness aroused Ron's fighting spirit. He sneered, revealing a row of white teeth. "As you wish." It was too late. At that moment, Ron moved. His body approached like lightning. Tai-Shan's face was unprecedentedly serious. His body flashed, and a long sword appeared in his hand, clashing with Ron's bone spear. Boom! The two forces collided, creating a large amount of smoke and dust. The grass on the ground was blown to the left and right. Tai-Shan used his long sword to block Ron's attack, and said in a deep voice, "Fast speed. Are you a magician? Or a warrior?" Ron laughed, then, "Are you a magician or a warrior?" As soon as his voice fell, the bone spear in his hand pierced towards Tai-Shan like raindrop. Whirlwind cut. Tai-Shan could not help but show weakness. He used the beastman's battle skill to counterattack. For a moment, the weapons in his hands clashed, and it was difficult to tell who had the upper hand. Boom! Tai-Shan's body was bounced back. His whole body rushed into the lake. He took a step back and suddenly stopped. His face was cold and he slowly raised his sword. Ice-breaking cut. A sword aura broke out from his body. On the lake, two high splashes were split. The sword aura carried a strong air wave, and it blasted towards Ron. "Come!" Ron laughed wildly. The bone spear in his hand was thrown out. Like Tai-Shan's sword aura, it also split the lake into two waves. Boom! An earth-shattering sound was heard. The whole lake seemed to be on fire. Huge waves soared into the sky and splashed around like rain. After the loud sound, the lake water flew down. For a moment, both of them were drenched. The bone spear in Ron's hand could be long or short. It could be thrown, and it could also be used as a spear. Moreover, it could be summoned at any time, catching the enemy off guard. At this moment, he was holding the spear with both hands. His whole body was wet, and his face was cold in the water. Tai-Shan's strength was beyond his imagination. This was a difficult opponent. After a short fight, Ron came to a conclusion. This Tai-Shan was not as obscene as he seemed on the surface. He was so easy to deal with. He was more than one level higher than Aojiao. Tai Shan's foundation was very solid. His every move had the demeanor of a master. In terms of martial arts, it was obvious that he had received guidance from an expert. The Beastman race was very talented. They had extremely powerful strength when they were born. Many people focused on the Beastman's talent, but neglected the Beastman's battle skills. Their battle skills were rough and bold, but they formed their own style. They were not inferior to the human sword skills, or even better. Tai Shan's face was relaxed, but his heart was not as relaxed as it looked. His opponent's strange attack made him break out in cold sweat. Tai Shan's movements were as graceful as a thief's, and coupled with the magic that disappeared like fog, it was impossible to guard against. Chapter 325. Although Iron Mountain's words were soft, the vigilance in his hands did not decrease at all. He held his saber with both hands, ready to attack at any time. Feeling the other party's mountain-like aura, Ron muttered to himself for a moment. Yes. With a wave of his hands, the two bone spears turned into a cloud of black gas and disappeared. Iron Mountain was obviously relieved. He put his long saber back into the space bag and smiled. I'll go back first. Big Sister Morin will be leaving soon. You should go back too. After a deep bow, he left. After fighting with Ron, he had a deeper understanding of this human's strength. Orcs respected the strong. His attitude towards Ron also became more polite. After Iron Mountain left, Ron was also relieved. He stepped on the lake water and walked to the shore. After fighting with Iron Mountain for no reason, Ron's mood did not lighten up. Instead, it became heavier. In the Orc Empire's young strong men's deathmatch, there were many strong men. A mere Iron Mountain would not be easy to deal with. Ron walked slowly back to the convoy. An hour had passed, and the convoy was still waiting. Ron thought to himself, people's words are like farts. They were supposed to rest for an hour, but they still haven't left. Brother Ron, why are your clothes soaked? Raindrop saw Ron and hurriedly ran out. It's nothing. Ron smiled and told her about what happened by the lake. Raindrop heard it and became worried. Are you okay? Ron smiled. Do we look like we're not okay? I'll find you some clothes to change into, Raindrop said. Ron jumped into his carriage and changed his clothes in the carriage. He walked out of the carriage and felt refreshed when the breeze blew. At this time, Ron's gaze paused. His gaze inadvertently looked out of the window and unexpectedly found a person. That person was hiding behind the forest, not far away. He focused his gaze and found that it was actually Kay. Above the space in the woods, Kay's body was slightly bent. Her expression was solemn as she slowly took a deep breath. The iron fist hidden at her waist suddenly punched out. Then, her 5 fingers turned into a claw, creating a sound that pierced through the air. Hoo, following his agile movements, he brandished his set of fists like a tiger, and his body jumped around like an ape. What fist technique is this? Ron watched him quietly from behind the forest and frowned. He felt that the posture of this set of boxing was a little strange. These moves were not like that of a human, but more like a wild beast pouncing on its prey. After about 3 minutes, Kay finished a set of punches. He let out a long sigh and slowly stopped. His breathing was a little hurried, and sweat seeped out of his forehead. At this moment, a sound came from behind the forest. Pa. Kay turned around with a trace of astonishment in her eyes. Ron smiled as he approached and said, Kay, not bad. Your fist technique is quite powerful. Being praised by Ron, Kay was a little embarrassed. He lowered his head and did not say anything. Ron smiled. He had some feelings for this shy boy and asked, You seem to be very proficient in this fist technique. You must have learned it for a long time, right? Kay replied, 7-8 years. Ron circled around Kay. His eyes scrutinized this 13-year-old child. He felt that there was something wrong with him, but he could not tell what exactly was wrong. Kay was stared at by him until she felt uncomfortable. Her face had already turned red. By the way, what's the name of this fist technique? Ron looked at this shy boy and asked with interest. This, when Kay heard this, she stammered. Hee. Ron smiled. Is it inconvenient? If that's the case, I won't force you. Ron's smile melted the ice in Kay's heart. He hesitated for a moment before answering. It's called Beaumont Fist Technique. Beaumont Fist Technique? Ron's heart suddenly jumped. Kay's answer was completely out of his expectations. Beaumont Fist Technique? Beaumont clan's martial arts? Ron said in astonishment. Yes. Kay nodded her head helplessly. She looked at Ron and bit her lips. As if she had made up her mind, she said, Big brother Ron, actually, I'm a Beaumont. Beaumont? Ron heard this and was stunned. His mouth was wide open, enough to swallow an egg. Ron looked at Kay in disbelief. No matter what, he could not connect this shy boy with a fierce Beaumont beast. You're a Beaumont? The Beaumont clan of magical beasts? After the shock, Ron asked. It was no wonder. Kay's body did not look like a Beaumont. Moreover, with Beaumont's strong body, how could it be poisoned by the Krite? Is it true? Ron did not believe it. Kay quickly said, Big brother Ron, how about I turn into a Beaumont for you? While speaking, Kay's body changed. Long black fur grew out of Kai's body, arms, back, and other parts of his body, turning him into a wild beast. His 10 fingers grew huge, sharp claws. Then, her figure began to grow. Her clothes could no longer support her huge body and burst open. She opened her mouth, revealing the sharp fangs inside. Not long after, a 2-meter-tall Beaumont beast appeared in front of Ron. But Kay, who had turned into a Beaumont beast, was at a loss. She was not used to it. Her demeanor and temperament did not have the fierce aura of the real Beaumont beast. Sure enough, it's a Beaumont. Ron's eyes lit up. The face of the Beaumont beast called Omega appeared in his mind. There was a vague resemblance between the eyebrows, but Kay's body was not as tall as Omega. Beaumont. Kay scratched her head. I'm sorry, big brother Ron. I'm not used to being like this. Ron nodded. At this time, he frowned. I don't know why. Although you've become a Beaumont, I keep feeling that something is wrong. It's like you're missing something. It's power. Kay smiled. Her smile was a little bitter. Although I look like a Beaumont, I don't have Beaumont's power. You don't have Beaumont's power? Ron was shocked beyond words. His eyes widened in disbelief. What's going on? Kay sighed softly. Her body slowly shrank and changed back to her original form, a 13 or 14-year-old boy. She looked at Ron and bit her lip. Actually, I escaped from home. Once upon a time, I was also proud of being a Beaumont. But as I grew older, I began to feel that something was wrong with me. Power. The power that Beaumont is most proud of, I actually don't have it. Kay smiled and looked at Ron. Her smile was very bitter. It's unbelievable, isn't it? But the truth is so cruel. As a Beaumont, I actually don't have innate power. You may not believe it, but in fact, my power is even worse than the most ordinary human. Ron also sighed. He could understand Kay's feelings. As a Beaumont, it was also a very sad thing to be even worse than a human. Just like that, I suffered all the coldness and ridicule in the clan. Everyone looked down on me. They thought that I was the disgrace of the Beaumont clan. Some people even regarded me as the source of the clan's disaster. Kay covered her head and fell into painful memories. So, you escaped. Ron sighed. He was full of sympathy for Kay. Kay nodded. What about your parents? Aren't they worried about you running out like this? Ron thought and asked. My mother was a human. When I was very young, she died of illness. Kay's eyes were a little sad. And my father, when it came to her father, Kay suddenly raised her head, her eyes filled with intense anger. No. He doesn't deserve to be my father. Kay's eyes turned crimson, and he clenched his teeth like a wild, dirty novel. She clenched her teeth and roared like a beast. Do you know what he called me? Bastard. A father actually called his son a bastard. It's because my mother was a human. Looking at the angry Kay, Ron's throat seemed to be choked with something and he couldn't say anything. He sighed and said, "No matter what, he is your father. I believe that his heart for you will never change." Brother Ron, you don't know. Kay calmed her emotions and smiled. Among all the magical beast races, family is just an unnecessary decoration. For a magical beast, an excellent bloodline is the most important thing. Ron thought for a while and said, "That's not possible? When a human and a magical beast combine, there is a 50% chance that it will be a human or a magical beast. From your situation, you can transform into a Beaumont, so you should be a magical beast. How did it become like this?" "I don't know either." Kay took a deep breath. "Sometimes, I really wish to become a complete human. At least I don't have to bear this kind of humiliation." Back in the carriage, Kay took out clothes from Becerra's space bag and changed. She glanced at Ron and hesitated for a while before saying, "Brother Ron, I'm Beaumont and I hope you won't go out." Ron nodded and glanced at Kay and asked, "Does Becerra know?" "Sister knows." Kay nodded. "Although I'm not her biological brother, in my heart, I have long treated her as my biological sister. She knows all my secrets." Ron nodded again. He thought for a while and asked, "Then, what do you plan to do in the future? Don't you want to go back?" "What else can I do? Don't tell me I really think of myself as a Beaumont? What's the point of going back home? A powerless Beaumont? Forget it, I don't want people to laugh at me." Kay smiled bitterly. "All these years I've thought it through." At this time, Kay took a deep breath. "My mother is a human. Perhaps, as she wishes, it's not bad to be an ordinary human and live a stable life." Chapter 326. Orc Kingdom, Zumur City. Perhaps because of the battle between the strongest, Zumur City was livelier than usual. The bustling streets were filled with elites of various races from all over the world, and there were many more young faces on the streets. Their faces were full of vitality, and they had the courage of a newborn calf who was not afraid of a tiger. Perhaps it was because of the popularity brought by the Battle of the Young Masters. The shops were 30 to 40% more expensive than usual. A circular arena stood in the middle of Zumur City. It was a landmark building in Zumur City for thousands of years, and it was also the arena where the young masters of the Orc Empire fought to the death. The entire Colosseum was filled with the thick aura of history. Although it had been renovated many times, the Colosseum was still modeled. In the long years, it had witnessed countless battles, life and death, despair and glory. Scene after scene of tragedy and comedy were solemnly staged here. The beastman's blood was filled with fighting genes. The Colosseum's desire was to satisfy the beastman's desire for glory, the glory that belonged to the strong. In the Colosseum they could obtain everything: cheers, applause, fame, glory, money, people, power. This was different from humans. Human nobles often sent warriors to duel with each other, but their purpose was mostly for fun. Of course, this glory of the strong did not only belong to the orcs. The participants were from all races, including magical beasts and elves. As long as you were under 25 years old, you could participate in this glorious battle. In one of the private rooms in the Colosseum, this was the best place to enjoy the exciting matches. Of course, this private room wasn't for ordinary people, no matter how rich they were. However, this wasn't a problem for Big Sister Molan of the Beastman's golden family. Morin sat there with Ron, Taishan, and Aojiao. Other than Morin, the other three were the contestants this time. The other three were Raindrop, Kay, and Becerra. They were not qualified to sit there, but under Ron's insistence, Morin could only accept. "Brother Ron, there are so many people." Raindrop leaned on the railing and looked out. Today, she was wearing a light purple dress and looked very cute. Her face was full of excitement and a hint of innocence. Becerra also wore a festive dress. Ron was also observing from the distance. From top to bottom, he had a panoramic view of the Colosseum. In the contestant lounge, he saw many young experts. Many of them already possessed extraordinary strength at such a young age. Seeing this scene, Ron couldn't help but sigh in admiration. There were still many geniuses in this world. At this moment, Morin pushed open the door and entered the room. She glanced at everyone and said, "Ron, Tai Shan, Aojiao, I've already signed you guys up. Later, you guys will participate in the preliminaries, understand? There's a preliminary round." Ron frowned. Of course, there are so many people signing up. Morin glanced at him and said in a clear voice, "You're all the best youths. Don't tell me that you can't even pass the preliminaries." "Of course, that's impossible." Aojiao sat at the side with a glass of red wine in his hand and said proudly. This was the treatment that only the VIP rooms had. His eyes wandered to Becerra and Raindrop at the side. After Ron's emotionless gaze swept over him, he retracted his gaze. "I hope so." Morin nodded and said, "I won't sit here anymore. Grandpa is here, and I want to accompany him." She glanced at Ron and reminded him, "Ron, cherish this opportunity." "Got it," Ron said expressionlessly. He knew that the grandpa that Morin was talking about was the bull-headed race's god of war, Li Jia. Morin nodded and turned to leave. Becerra's eyes were filled with worry. She walked to Ron's side and said softly, "Ron, even though this is a battle to the death, you can still surrender. If you can't win, don't force yourself, no." Ron shook his head and said faintly, "Becerra, do you think I still have a choice?" Becerra was speechless for a moment. Ron was very clear that this battle was his last chance. If he surrendered, it was no different from dying in battle. The Orc Empire would no longer tolerate him. Rather than surrender and be killed by Morin, he might as well fight. This was the decision that Ron had made before he came. Knock, knock, knock. Not long after, the arena's attendant knocked on the door and entered. "May I know who is Mr. Ron, Mr. Iron Mountain, and Mr. Aojiao?" After the three of them answered, the attendant took out a plate. "This is your number plate. Please take it and report to the competition venue later to participate in the preliminaries." Ron and the other two took their number plates. Iron Mountain was number 16, Ron was number 98, and Aojiao was number 156. "Brother Ron, go for it," Raindrop said. "Ron, don't die," Becerra said worriedly. "I hope you can come back with a good ranking," Kay said. With everyone's encouragement and blessings, Ron left the room and went to the competition venue. In the room, Ron went to the other contestants who were going to participate in the competition with him. There were many contestants in the preliminaries. Ron's number was at the back, so it was his turn to fight. He could only wait quietly. In the arena outside, cheers, exclamations, and applause were endless. The atmosphere was very intense. The battle must be exciting, Ron thought to himself. If it was possible, Ron really wanted to watch their battle. However, he was a contestant, so he could only stay in the contestants' lounge. Waiting was the most boring thing. Ron could not help but stare blankly. However, from the sounds outside, the competition was going very quickly. It should be his turn soon. "Hey brother, can we talk?" At this time, a young swordsman smiled and walked towards him, greeting him. "You!" Ron nodded politely. "I'm Ham." The swordsman named Ham introduced himself and sat down beside him. He looked at Ron carefully and smiled. "You're a human too?" "Yes." Ron nodded and answered. Not bad. I'm a human too." Ham was happy as if he had opened a chatterbox. "You're here to try your luck too, right?" "Try my luck." Ron felt that it was strange. The battle of the strongest was a battle to the death. How could it be a test of luck? "Big brother, what's that about trying your luck?" Ron asked modestly. Hee hee, you've never heard of it? Ham was a little proud. I'm a good person, so I'll tell you, based on my experience from participating in the 2 matches between young masters. Actually, the young masters match is just a match of luck. Because it's randomly matched, you don't even know who your opponent is before the match. Therefore, it's all about luck. Ham explained. I see. Ron nodded. If I meet a weak opponent, it'll be easy to pass the preliminaries. That's right. Ham said excitedly. If I'm lucky and meet a weak opponent, I'll be rich. Ron, did you know? There was once a human who rushed into the top 10 because of luck. The top 10. The rewards for the top 10 were very impressive. Ham's eyes were burning with passion. But he knew that with his strength, it was impossible for him to reach the top 10. Ron frowned. Based on what you said, humans can only rush into the top 10 because of luck? Is there no one who rushed into the top 10 because of their strength? Humans rushed into the top 10 because of their strength. Ham looked at Ron in shock. Brother, are you having a fever? How can humans rush into the top 10 because of their strength? Unless it's a test of luck. Ham said with certainty. Ron frowned. Could it be that there are no powerful experts among the humans? Of course, there are powerful humans too, Ham said with a smile. But Brother Ron, don't forget what kind of competition this is. This is the battle of the strongest. Only teenagers can participate in this competition. The age limit is 25 years old this year. Do you think that with our talent, we can beat those races who are extremely talented at the same age? In the previous battle of the strongest, the top 10 places have been monopolized by the magical beasts, orcs, and elves. In fact, the battle of the strongest is a stage for those higher races to perform. As for us humans, we're not in the mainstream. Ham said self-deprecatingly. Some of those gifted magical beasts are born as master-level powerhouses. Do you think we humans can compare with them? Ron was silent. He knew that Ham was telling the truth. He pointed to the large group of humans in front of him and said softly, Ron, there are so many humans who signed up. In fact, they're just like me. They're all here to try their luck. I can bet you that as soon as those guys find out that their opponents are orcs or magical beasts, they'll immediately give up the competition. Believe it or not, only then did Ron come to a realization. No wonder the competition progressed so quickly. It turned out that they had all forfeited. Haha, of course. Sometimes, if we're unlucky, we'll run into a battle between magical beasts in the preliminaries. That would be wonderful. Ham's thoughts wandered. I have to remember the last tournament. 2 magical beasts that could have been ranked in the top 3 of the Young Masters tournament had a thrilling battle in the preliminaries. One of them was a pornographic novel. One of the magical beasts lost and withdrew from the competition. In that case, one of the top 10 places was empty. It'll be great if we encounter humans. That way, our chances of getting a place will greatly increase. Ham smiled. But all in all, it's still possible to get into the top 10. It's impossible to get into the top 5. No matter how hard you try, you still need to have some strength. Ron finally understood some of the general knowledge of the competition system. There were some things that Morin had never told him. By the way, Brother Ron, what's your profession? Ham asked with a smile. He couldn't tell what Ron's profession was from his attire. I'm a necromancer. Ham was speechless. He thought that he had met a weirdo today. A necromancer who couldn't even defeat a normal human was participating in the battle of the strongest? He wanted to try his luck? Could it be that he just wanted to show his face in front of everyone? At this time, a voice sounded in the venue. Now, let's invite contestants number 13 and 167 to enter. It's my turn. Ham stood up. Ron saw that he was holding the number 167 in his hand. I hope I'm lucky and don't encounter those freakish opponents. I'll be eliminated in the first round of the preliminaries. Ham said with a bitter smile. Ron also stood up and nodded. Good luck. Chapter 327. Morin pushed open the door to the most honorable box in the middle of the circular arena and walked in. Grandpa! Morin sweetly called out to the old man sitting in the middle. An old beast man sat in the middle, his face full of wrinkles, his eyelids almost drooping down. His body was very thin and weak, as if a gust of wind could blow him over. This old beast man was no different from an ordinary old beast man. Just based on his appearance, no one could imagine that he was the beast god of the beastmen, the divine realm expert Li Jia. Seeing Morin enter, Li Jia's eyelids slightly lifted. He smiled and said, "Oh, I was wondering who it was. So it's my lovely son." Below Li Jia sat a middle-aged man. He was the current emperor of the Beastmen Empire, Salomon. In the Beastmen Empire, where the strong were respected as the emperor, his strength couldn't be too weak. In fact, Salomon was a sacred domain expert. He was a battle saint from the Rock tribe. Unlike humans, the Beastmen's emperor wasn't hereditary, it was held by the strongest of the Golden family. According to the Beastmen's tradition, even the beast god Li Jia couldn't interfere. In the box, other than the beast god, there were also a few ministers of the Beastmen Palace. They all had decent strength. Salomon naturally recognized Morin. He smiled and pointed to a chair beside Li Jia. "Nephew Morin is here, sit down." "No need, Imperial Uncle Salomon. I'll just help Grandpa massage his neck." Morin knew that Grandpa's neck was always sore. She quickly walked behind him and gently massaged it. "My son is still the best." Li Jia smiled like a kind old man. He leaned comfortably on the chair and narrowed his eyes. Enjoying Morin's gentle massage, Li Jia sighed. I'm old. Old people have more problems. Salomon, if I was your age, my body would be so great. I would eat 3 big buckets of rice every day." Salomon didn't feel anything wrong with Li Jia calling him by his name. The beast god Li Jia had a special position among the beastmen. How can I compare to Master Strength?" A look of admiration flashed in Salomon's eyes. Back then, when Master Strength was still a sacred domain expert, he once killed the deep-sea serpent, an exotic beast from the sacred domain that was wreaking havoc on the east coast. At that time, I was only an ordinary great sword master. If it were me, Master Strength is still as impressive as before. What's the point of talking about such trivial matters? Right now, it's already the young people's world." Li Jia said with a chuckle. Salomon smiled, as if he had thought of something. He glanced at Morin and said, "Oh right, I heard that nephew Morin's Thorny Flower tribe is also participating in the competition. Is that true?" Morin laughed. "Royal uncle, you are forgetful. Our Thorny Flower tribe has participated in the competition every time. It's just that we didn't get a place in the competition." "Indeed." When it came to the ranking, Salomon nodded in agreement. The current battle of the strongest has completely changed. For the past few competitions, the top 3 have been monopolized by the Beast Clan. In the previous competition, our Beastman clan's genius expert, Zhu, barely managed to rank 5th. He is also the only young expert of our Beastman clan who managed to rank in the top 5. Zhu was a beastman's name. He was in the top 5 of the previous competition. This time, he once again represented the Beastman clan's Furious Wind tribe in the competition. His class was Wind Knight. At this point, Salomon smiled awkwardly. Master Strength, to be honest, this time the age change is also for him. He was 21 years old last time. This year, he just turned 25 years old. He barely managed to qualify for the competition. Otherwise, this time, our Beastman clan might not even have a place in the top 5. That's right. Li Jia nodded. However, this competition situation is more serious than the previous ones. According to what I know, this time, the Beast Clan has sent a lot of advanced races to participate in the competition. Yes. Salomon nodded. This time, there are a few advanced races of magical beasts, such as the Poison Manticore Clan, the Beaumont Clan, and so on. The Poison Manticore Clan is here too? Li Jia was a little surprised. He muttered to himself for a moment and then slowly said, "Indeed, the Beast Clan's racial talents are beyond our reach. However, since we are in this world, we must have the courage to chase after them. In my opinion, they can't beat the Beast Clan, but it doesn't mean anything. It only means that they haven't worked hard enough." After pausing for a moment, Li Jia glanced at Salomon and continued, "The Beast Clan has taken the top 5. This is their ability. Salomon, you changed the age to let Zhu participate. Aren't you a little too nervous?" "Yes. Master Strength is right." When Salomon heard this, he broke out in cold sweat. "I'm just worried that the top 5 of our Beastman clan has been taken by the Beast Clan. I'll definitely change the age back in the next competition, change it back." Zhu was 5th in the previous competition, but that doesn't mean that he will be 5th this time. There are many variables. Li Jia smiled and waved his hand magnanimously. "As for changing the age again, there's no need for that. Just do what you need to do." "Yes, Master." Salomon bowed and said, "All right, what kind of rankers did your Thorny Flower tribe send out this year?" At this time, Li Jia turned to Morin and asked. Morin had been listening to the conversation between the two of them. Even her clenched fists unknowingly stopped. Grandfather, the rankers that my Thorny Flower tribe sent out this year will definitely surprise you," Morin said with a smile. Her eyes had a trace of craftiness. Grandfather, wait for me." Li Jia smiled unusually brightly. "For the next battle, contestant number 98, get ready." A rough voice rang out in the hall. "It's my turn." Ron took a deep breath and stood up. His eyes were shining with a strong confidence. A human servant led him to the end of the long corridor. That was where the contestants were prepared. There, Ron unexpectedly saw Ham. He saw that Ham had lost his high-spirited demeanor and was listless like a frosted eggplant. "Ham." Ron walked forward and greeted him. He smiled and asked, "How was it? Did you pass the preliminaries?" "Sigh, don't mention it." Ham sighed and said, "My luck is very bad." "What's wrong?" Ron asked. "Unfortunately, my opponent in the preliminaries was a demonic beast. Moreover, it was the pinnacle of the demonic beasts, Poison Scorpion Lion." Ham spread out his hands and made a helpless expression. "Can you even fight like that?" "If we really fought, I reckon that I would be instantly killed by him before I could even say the word surrender. So, I was very wise. After he appeared on the stage, I immediately forfeited. I couldn't stay on the stage for even a minute." Ham said, "He's not bad either. He seemed to know that I wouldn't fight with him, so he directly revealed his body." "Really?" Ron didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "He asked you to forfeit and you said he's not bad?" Ham looked at Ron strangely. "Ron, you don't know that some demonic beasts are very bloodthirsty and insidious. They deliberately don't reveal their bodies and tempt you with their human identities. Once you decide to fight, they immediately reveal their bodies and instantly kill you before you can even say the word surrender. Some even use their human bodies to fight with you. Even if they kill you, you won't know that they are demonic beasts." "Really?" Ron sweated when he heard this. So there were also insidious beasts among the demonic beasts. "Contestant number 98, Ron, please come over here." At this time, a voice interrupted their conversation. A human servant stuck his head out of the door and waved for him to enter. You're going to take the age test. After that, you'll be ready to go on the stage. Good luck," Ham said with a smile. "Yes." Ron nodded. "Good luck to you too." "I won't be lucky," Ham said with a bitter smile. "Damn it, I've hit the jackpot. I met a demonic beast in the first round. He spat out a mouthful of saliva and walked away, cursing and swearing. Ron walked into the room and saw an old orc sitting on a chair. In front of him, there was a strange thing that looked like a magic array that was constantly rotating. Come here, in the middle. The old orc pointed at the magic array and said coldly. After confirming that there was no danger in the magic array, Ron walked up. The old orc closed his eyes. After a while, he said, "Well, you're only 18 years old. Not bad, you can participate in the competition." The old orc's face softened a little. Ron then realized that the magic array was actually used to measure age. No wonder the Battle of Xiaoqiang was so strict about age. Put your portal bag and other items in that cabinet. Other than weapons and armor, you're not allowed to bring anything else into the arena. The old orc pointed at the cabinet. Morin had told him about this, so Ron didn't think much about it. He put the portal bag that he carried with him into the pornographic novel. In the cabinet, he only took the staff of inheritance and walked out of the door. A burst of dazzling sunlight shone on him. Ron reached out his hand to block it. He calmed himself down and slowly walked into the arena. When the contestants appeared, the entire arena cheered. The atmosphere made Ron's blood boil. In the middle of the arena there were two people. One of them was an orc wearing the uniform of a referee, and the other was a human wearing light armor. He was also his opponent in this match. Ron glanced at him and felt that the other party should be older than him. Are you clear about the rules? Although it's a battle to the death, I hope that both sides will not maliciously kill each other. They should be allowed to forfeit, admit defeat, and surrender. Do you understand? The orc referee said expressionlessly. In this day, he had repeated the same words countless times. As soon as he finished speaking, the human teenager said arrogantly, "Son, you should forfeit as soon as possible. I'm a magic beast, Wind Wolf. I'll beat you until you can't tell north from south." Ron was startled. "You're a magic beast?" "That's right." The teenager smiled mysteriously. "I heard that you humans like to try your luck in the Battle of Xiaoqiang. You hope to meet a weak human opponent. Hee, I won't give you such a chance." He licked his lips lightly. His eyes flashed with a strong murderous intent. "I won't give you my body now. You need to know whether I'm a magic beast or a human. It's very simple. One word. Bet, either you forfeit now or you choose to fight. But if you bet wrong, my wind blade will tear you to pieces in an instant before you can admit defeat." "You can do as you wish," the teenager said slowly. This time, Ron was silent. He frowned. This was a bet. Was the teenager in front of him a human? Or a magic beast? The orc referee also turned around and asked expressionlessly, "Contestant Ron, do you want to fight? Or forfeit?" Chapter 328. The boy didn't carry any weapons. Usually, only magical beasts didn't carry weapons. Ron looked at the boy from head to toe. He couldn't tell if he was a human or a magical beast. If a high-level magical beast wanted to hide its tracks, it couldn't be seen from its appearance. "Yes." The youth chuckled coldly, looking calm and unruffled as he waited for Ron's final decision. Ron nodded slightly and turned to the orc referee. "I've decided to fight." As soon as Ron's voice fell, the boy's face changed slightly. He was just an ordinary human who used his opponent to try his luck. In the last tournament of the strongest young masters, he used this method to win many times. Unfortunately, he met a real magical beast in the semi-finals and had to withdraw regretfully. But this time, he met Ron, a human who really wanted to participate in the tournament and win a ranking. The boy's face quickly returned to normal. He smiled sinisterly. "Son, have you thought it through? If you make the wrong bet, the price you have to pay may be your life." Ron smiled. "Whether you are a human or a magical beast, it's all the same to me. In other words, even if you are a magical beast, I will still beat you. The boy couldn't stand it anymore and laughed. Since you want to die, don't blame me. The orc referee nodded. Very well. Since both sides have decided to fight, then after I give the order, the match will begin. A trace of anger flashed in the boy's eyes. He bowed slightly, bent his hands into claws, and made a pouncing posture. It had to be said that the boy did have a talent for acting. Some of the expressions and movements of a magical beast after turning into a human, he imitated them perfectly. It seemed that he had put in a lot of effort. Even a veteran mercenary wouldn't be able to see it. Ron held the staff of inheritance in front of him and was on full alert. 3, 2, 1. Begin. With the orc referee's order, Ron's preliminaries in the tournament of the strongest young masters began. For a moment, cheers came from the stage, wave after wave. Die. The young man made the first move to gain the upper hand. He was the first to attack. A bright light flashed in his boots, and two short blades shot out like magic. With a strong sound of wind, they fiercely stabbed towards Ron. Weapons? Ron was slightly surprised. How could a weapon appear? Where's the magical beast? While he was in a daze, the youth had already pounced in front of him. A bright light flashed, and the weapon in his hand chopped down fiercely. Eviscerate! Ron did not dare to be negligent. He casually swung the staff in his hand, blocking the youth's killing move. The youth's speed was extremely fast. In an instant, he had launched another 17 or 18 attack. Shadow strike. Backstab. Cut. A series of attacks were like moving clouds and flowing water, each of them aimed for Ron's fatal spots. What? He's a thief. At this time, Ron suddenly realized that the other party had pretended to be a magical beast in order to scare away those humans who were trying their luck. Generally speaking, once humans heard the name of a magical beast, they would be scared to death. How would they dare to compete? Damn, I was almost fooled by this guy. Ron cursed fiercely in his heart. At the same time, his right hand did not stop. He used the staff as a bone spear, casually blocking the other party's attack. Clang! 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 In the spacious arena, a fierce battle unfolded. Figures flashed in the arena. Two figures quickly intertwined with each other, causing a series of metal clashing sounds that were as loud as firecrackers. Come on! Kill him! Kill him! Humans, on the high platform, there was an endless stream of cheers. As the battle unfolded, the atmosphere in the arena rushed to the peak. Everyone's enthusiasm was ignited in an instant. The eyes of the people on the platform showed a fanatical look, and they shouted like crazy. As the battle went on, the youth gradually felt that something was wrong. He judged that Ron was a magician from his clothes and the weapon he used. But when they fought, it was not the case. The other party was actually using a magic staff as a melee weapon, and his defense was airtight. He focused his eyes and found that Ron was not holding a magic staff. He did not know what kind of weapon it was. What exactly is your occupation? That young man couldn't attack and was a little anxious. At this point, Ron had a rough idea of the other party's strength. The youth's strength was between advanced professionals, which meant that he was an advanced thief. For his age, he was not bad. In the Barafax Academy, he would be a genius. But in the Orc Empire, where racial talents were high, this kind of strength was obviously not enough. Pornographic novels, Ron chuckled. Haha, how is it? Why don't you show yourself? I've been waiting to experience your powerful wind blades. Be asterisk starred, the youth was angry. He knew that the other party had seen through him, so he attacked even more crazily. Unfortunately, the other party was like taking a stroll in the park. No matter how he attacked, it was useless. Damn it! The youth fiercely clenched his teeth, and with a whoosh, his body disappeared. Ron was slightly stunned. His expression was dignified. He spun the staff in his hand and tucked it under his armpit. He looked around, but the youth's figure had disappeared from the huge arena. The corners of Ron's mouth curled up slightly. Invisibility? I can do it too. At this time, Ron's body gradually became illusory, like a cloud of black fog. Not long after, he dissipated in the air. At this time, the arena was empty. No one knew where the two had gone. What happened? They both disappeared. What is this? At the most exciting part, the two disappeared. This time, some people could not stand it and began to clamor. Humans were animals that could be easily incited. For a moment there were protests on the stage. The referee was helpless. Both of them had disappeared. None of them had encountered such a situation. What do we do now? One of the orc referees asked. The main referee pondered for a moment and slowly said, "One of them is a human thief. Don't worry, he will appear. I don't know what the other person's profession is. He doesn't look like a thief. Let's wait patiently." Another orc referee said helplessly. The youth was a little anxious. His time of invisibility was almost up, but he could not find his opponent's target. In this way, invisibility became meaningless. At this time, he heard the sound of wind behind his head. His heart was alarmed, but it was too late to dodge. He only felt a strong force and a sharp pain in his back. His entire body fell forward and flew out like a rolling gourd. He could not maintain his invisibility and revealed himself. At this time, the youth looked quite miserable. He scrambled to get up, and the two short blades were thrown away. "You lost." Ron walked closer step by step with a smile on his face. He pointed the bone staff in his hand forward and asked, "Do you still want to fight? Kill him! Kill him! Kill him!" Seeing that the outcome of the battle had been decided, the spectators on the circular stage of the Colosseum stood up. Similar voices converged into a torrent that resounded throughout the entire Colosseum. Ron frowned. He was not used to this kind of fanatical atmosphere. He did not want to kill unless it was necessary. "I lost." The youth pretended to be a magical beast before the competition. Although it was a little shameless, he admitted defeat very quickly. He also realized that his strength was far inferior to his opponent. Ron's face finally showed a smile. At this time, the orc referee walked to Ron's side, grabbed his hand, and raised it high. Winner, Ron. Ron's victory did not win the respect of the audience. On the contrary, the orcs cursed and raised their middle fingers at Ron. They were looking forward to a bloody scene, but Ron did not give them the chance. "Tsk. Boring, he didn't kill him." "Go to hell, human." The youth turned a deaf ear to the noise from the stage. He quickly walked to Ron's side and carefully sized him up. He sighed and said, "I lost, but can you tell me what your profession is?" "Of course, no problem." Ron smiled and paused for a moment. With a hint of pride, he said, "I'm a necromancer." After smiling, he turned and hurried away. "Necromancer?" The youth opened his mouth wide and stood there in a daze. It took him a while to come back to his senses. "Necromancer? He's actually a necromancer? That profession that's called trash?" Back in the box, Ron welcomed a big hug. Becerra threw herself at Ron, her full breasts pressed tightly against his chest. She raised her head from Ron's embrace and smiled like a flower. "Ron, you're amazing. I'm proud of you." On the stage, she saw Ron's every move. In her heart, Ron was a hero. "Brother Ron." Rainey smiled and threw herself into his arms, giggling. "Brother Ron, congratulations on winning the competition." Kay also walked over and smiled. Morin sat on the sofa at the side. After hearing the news of Ron's victory, she rushed back to the box and waited for Ron for a while. Morin smiled. "Ron, you did well. You've passed the first round of preliminaries." "First round?" Ron heard and frowned. "From what you said, I seem to have to participate in the second and third round of preliminaries?" "Of course, there are so many contestants. It's not that easy to enter the finals." Molan smiled and sized up his body. Not bad, you didn't suffer any injuries. But when I said not bad, I was referring to your luck. Your opponent is actually a human. Ron straightened his back and said calmly, no matter who my opponent is, I won't back down. Not bad. I hope you can keep it up. Morin smiled. At this time, she smiled sweetly, revealing a charming smile. You guys must be hungry. Let's go, I'll bring you guys for a meal. Now is the time for the battle of the strongest, and the restaurant is not booked yet. The first round of preliminaries on the first day ended quickly, followed by the second and third round of preliminaries. The contestants who participated in the battle of the strongest were eliminated, and more contestants left the arena. Ron was very lucky. His opponents in the second and third round were both humans. One was a paladin and the other was a magician. With Ron's strength, he won easily and successfully past the preliminaries. What surprised him was that Aojiao did not pass the preliminaries. He met the most powerful magical beast in the battle of the strongest, and unfortunately, he was eliminated. No advertisement, please come to first. Chapter 329. The Four Corners Castle in Zoomer City was the private property of another Golden Beastman family. Tonight, a grand banquet was held here. Dutton from the Bloodfang tribe was the host of tonight's banquet. He was also the younger brother of the current king of the Beastman Empire, Salomon. Everyone called him Prince Dutton. According to seniority, Morin should call him Royal Uncle. However, as the Royal Uncle, Dutton was very young. He was only 3 years older than Molan and was a very approachable young beastman. He was very enthusiastic, outspoken, and good at socializing. In the circle of celebrities in the Beastman Imperial City, he was also a very important person. Although Dutton had an ugly orc face, he was elegant and experienced in handling matters. He had the demeanor of Salomon. Cheers! Dutton raised the cup in his hand high. The cup was filled with red liquid. Morin, Ron, Tai Shan and the others also raised their cups and clinked it with Dutton's. They drank it in one gulp. Tonight's banquet in the Four Corners Castle was held for the experts of the Battle of the Strongest. Morin, who was also from the Golden family, was also invited. She brought Ron and the others to the banquet. Of course, other than Aojiao, he had already been eliminated and left the Thorny Flower tribe. Just as Morin said, the Thorny Flower tribe did not keep idle people. The banquet was filled with the so-called celebrities of the Beastman Empire's upper class. There were many people from the Golden family and there were also high-ranking military figures. Even Salomon came to the Four Corners Castle and gave a short speech. Of course, with his noble status, he could not stay. After drinking 2 cups of wine, he hurriedly left. The banquet continued in a quiet atmosphere. Compared to the other Beastman warriors, Dutton's body was less than 2 meters. He looked thin and weak. However, his strength was very dazzling. He was only 28 years old, and he was already an intermediate great combat master. The Golden family of the Beastman was different from the human nobles. There was no trash in the Golden family of the Beastman. Morin drank until her face was red. She smiled and said, Royal Uncle Dutton, thank you so much for your hospitality tonight. Ha! Morin, we grew up together. You don't have to call me Royal Uncle. You didn't call me that when I met you. Why have you become so distant now that we've grown up? Du Tan chuckled. His hearty laughter was very touching. However, when facing Morin, Du Tan unconsciously revealed a hint of passion. Basara gently touched Ron's arm. She covered her mouth and whispered, Ron, do you have feelings for Big Sister? What do you mean? Ron didn't quite understand. I like her, Basara whispered. Oh, really? Ron glanced at the two of them and said indifferently, Maybe, but it doesn't seem to have anything to do with me. Is it okay? Basara's eyes flashed with a mischievous smile. Why do I feel that big sister likes you? PFFF, Ron almost spat out the mouthful of wine in his mouth. He choked and coughed. Don't mess around. She has nothing to do with me. Although Morin was very beautiful, Ron didn't have any feelings for her. He didn't like or hate her. It was just a deal between them. Becerra whispered, blushing. Don't be like that. I can see that she still cares about you. She's tough on the mouth but soft on the heart. She even asked me about your situation in private. Ron smiled bitterly. You don't understand. Between me and her, it's more of a deal. She thinks that I can get a place in the Beastman Empire's Battle of the Strongest. The two of them had already attracted Du Tan's attention. He smiled and walked over with a cup in his hand. Ron. You're Ron, right? You did well in the Battle of the Strongest. He raised his cup. Du Tan didn't know Ron, so he didn't go to Ron's competition. He also didn't know how Ron performed. Among so many people in the banquet, he only remembered Ron's name and that he was the representative of the Thorny Flower tribe in the Battle of the Strongest. This showed that he had excellent memory. Ron, this is the Beastman Empire's Prince Du Tan. Morin reminded Ron, telling him not to be rude. You! Ron smiled faintly and clinked his cup with Du Tan's. However, he didn't drink. Du Tan drank it. After drinking it, he was slightly stunned. Ron, Morin was so angry that her eyebrows were raised. She glared at him fiercely. This was a very rude behavior. Sorry, I still have a competition tomorrow. Ron did it on purpose. He was unhappy with this so-called Prince Du Tan, so he purposely put him in his place. He smiled and put down his cup. I drank enough today. Hee, it's okay, it's okay. Du Tan smiled generously and waved his hand. I'll go accompany the other guests. Morin, you guys continue. Don't leave too early, yes, Uncle Du Tan. Morin had a sweet smile on her face as she left with Du Tan. In reality, her heart was burning with anger. When she passed by Ron, she reached out her slender fingers and pinched Ron's back hard. Ron didn't move. He frowned. Brother Ron, what's wrong with you? Where do you feel uncomfortable? Raindrop was biting a big piece of meat. The meat juice splashed everywhere. Her mouth was slurred. I'm fine. I was just bitten by a mosquito. Ron didn't even turn his head. His expression was normal. Oh. Raindrop nodded as if she understood. Morin's lungs were about to explode from anger. This despicable human. How dare he call me a mosquito? She stomped her foot and left with Du Tan in a fit of pique. This scene was caught by the sharp-eyed Taishan. He smiled foolishly and lowered his head. At this time, Kay stood up and smiled. Sister, Brother Ron, Brother Taishan, I'm going to the toilet. Go! Becerra smiled. Pornographic novel, she nodded. The Four Corners Castle was as luxurious as the Thorny Flower Castle, but it was much bigger. The densely packed rooms were like a maze, and finding a toilet wasn't easy. Of course, the service of the banquet was also very good. There was a beautiful human attendant at every corner of the banquet, providing service to all the guests. After asking the human attendant for directions to the toilet, Kay walked towards the direction she pointed out. In a dark corner of the four-cornered castle, two young figures were constantly entangled. The man was extremely handsome and charming, but the woman was extremely ugly. However, a human's face didn't seem to be an obstacle for the man. At this moment, the man was kissing her passionately. From her mouth, to her face, to her neck, and then to her chest. Slowly, he kissed down. The woman seemed to be enjoying the man's passion. She closed her eyes comfortably, and let the man do whatever he wanted. She mumbled something. If Ron was here, he would be shocked to see these two people. He knew both of them. One was Omega, whom he had fought with before. The other was Tommy, who had killed his father. Tommy's father, Wharton from the Sacred Domain, died in Ron's hands. Tommy was passionate about the woman in front of him. He did everything he could to win her over. Other than Omega, he had nothing left. As Wharton's illegitimate son, Tommy couldn't inherit Wharton's huge inheritance. The only thing left for him was this marriage. Although this marriage involved politics, it was also Tommy's last hope. After Wharton's death, his marriage with Omega was opposed by some people in the Beaumont clan. Only Omega, who had her heart captured, persisted. Only then could he live a luxurious life in the Beaumont clan as her fiancé. Otherwise, he would have to face the embarrassment of being kicked out. Therefore, Tommy, who was not very strong but knew how to take advantage of opportunities, could only desperately grab the Beaumont clan's fiancée. So far, he had been very successful. Omega loved him deeply. Omega also came to participate in the Battle of the Young Masters. Firstly, there was a lot of pressure from the clan to separate her from Tommy, so she wanted to come out and get some fresh air. Secondly, she was also very interested in the Battle of the Young Masters. For the Beaumont clan, who had super strong bodies, winning the championship was just a piece of cake. In the end, she decided to participate under Tommy's instigation. The Beaumont clan was very famous. Dutton wanted to invite the guests of the Battle of the Young Masters to a banquet, so how could he miss out on Omega, who was strong and in the limelight in the competition? He easily inquired about Omega's whereabouts in Zoomer City, and then the invitation card was sent to him. As expected, Behemoth's appearance received a hero's welcome. All the orcs present treated her as the most honorable guest. Even Tommy felt like he was basking in the glow of glory. They all drank a little too much tonight. Taking advantage of the alcohol, they began to make love outside a secluded toilet. Tommy's mouth kept moving downwards. Taking advantage of the alcohol, Omega also became excited and moaned softly. Although her face was ugly, her body was very hot. Tommy had long been used to it. When the lights were turned off, it was all the same. At this time, Tommy's perverted hands had reached for Omega's chest. With a little force, the evening dress that Omega was wearing for the banquet was torn off. No. Don't, seemingly aware of her fiancé's intentions, Omega's face had a trace of shyness. However, her body was as soft as mud. She, who had great strength, was like a docile lamb in front of this weak human. "Don't worry, dear. There's no one here." Tommy panted heavily. His enthusiasm almost melted Omega. Omega moaned softly, as if acquiescing to Tommy's behavior, making him even more unscrupulous. "Dear, I love you. I want to have a son with you, no, a lot of Beaumont, a lot of Beaumont." Tommy's words were like a bucket of cold water that splashed Omega awake instantly. "No," Omega pushed Tommy away and screamed. Tommy was stunned. He didn't expect Omega's enthusiasm to disappear so quickly. He stood there in a daze. Omega tidied her clothes and said softly, "Dear, it's very late. Let's go back." With a pull of Tommy, she turned around and left with a flushed face. "Dear, what's going on?" At this moment, Tommy was going crazy. Omega's sudden change shocked him. What was even more depressing was that he didn't know anything and couldn't grasp Omega's mentality. This was not a good sign for him. At this moment, Tommy was filled with insecurity. Omega didn't answer. She turned and walked away quickly. After taking a few steps, her footsteps suddenly stopped. Her face revealed an expression of disbelief. Omega saw a familiar person, and this person, she never imagined that he would appear here. Chapter 330. K. Omega was a little surprised, but in the next moment, a playful smile appeared on her face. Wonderful Eastern-style writing. K's face showed a trace of fear towards the person he called his sister. This fear was mixed with a strong sense of anger, and his body trembled violently due to anger and fear. Omega's mother was a pure-blooded Beaumont, while K's mother was a lowly human. Unlike Omega, K had inherited his mother's beautiful and thin features, and he looked more like a human. Seeing the fear on K's face, Omega's lips curled into a cold smile. Hee hee, Kay, I didn't expect to see you here. Tommy quickly chased after them, and glanced at Kay, frowned, and asked gently, Dear, who is he? Omega glanced at Tommy, smiled, and replied, He is my younger brother, my biological younger brother. Omega purposely emphasized the last sentence, and looked at Kay with a mocking gaze. Kay's fists gradually tightened, and his eyes turned blood red. He didn't expect to see her here, his sister who was called a demon. He couldn't forget how this sister of his had beaten him, and how she had beaten him until he had to lie in bed for months, and how she had stuffed his head into a pit of feces. Although Omega was his biological sister, she was the one who had bullied him the most. In Kay's eyes, the so-called family had long been replaced by hatred, and Kay's escape from the Beaumont territory was largely related to her. There was no familial affection between the magical beasts. There was only the natural law of survival of the fittest. This principle was very well interpreted by the Behemoth clan. Oh! A fawning smile appeared on Tommy's face. It was a smile he had shown to every single member of the Beaumont clan. So, he's also a Beaumont, Tommy said with a smile. My name is Tommy. I'm your sister's husband. He had long called himself Omega's husband, and Omega was already used to it. He, Beaumont? No, he's just a piece of trash. Omega sneered. A complete piece of trash. Tommy was a little surprised. He didn't expect Omega to have such a reaction. Didn't it sound very unfriendly? Angry pornographic novel. He clenched his fist. If he could, he wanted to punch Omega's ugly face a few times, but he endured it in the end. Kay knew in his heart that he was definitely not Omega's opponent. If he fought with her, he would only be abused. Looking at Kay's clean and thin face that was different from the beastmen, Omega only felt a burst of disgust. She didn't know why, but ever since Kay came out she didn't like him. This kind of attitude directly turned into violence. Because of Omega's instigation, Kay's childhood was an unbearable journey. If he could, he wished that he didn't come to this world. Omega laughed. What are you doing here? My trash brother. You mouth. Don't call me brother, I don't have a sister like you. Kay screamed. His chest violently moved up and down because of anger. So it's a human. I thought it was a Beaumont. Sure enough, it's a piece of trash. After Tommy understood Omega's thoughts, he turned hostile faster than flipping a book. But he was wrong, he thought Kay was a human. Omega didn't care about Kay's roar. Kay, don't tell me you're also participating in this year's tournament of the strongest young masters. If that's the case, then it's great. I can teach you a lesson again. Of course, if you have the ability to make it to the finals. Omega had a mocking smile, her cold words like a sword piercing Kay's heart. His anger was ignited in an instant. At this moment, Kay couldn't bear it anymore. He finally exploded. Go to hell. Kay's eyes became blood red. At this moment, he began to transform. Long hair grew out, covering his whole body. Sharp claws also emerged from his armor. His whole body became huge. Not long after, a valiant Beaumont majestically appeared in front of Omega and Tommy. Tommy mistakenly thought that Kay was a human. When Kay revealed his true form, he was scared silly, his body trembling. Kay roared and pounced, his sharp claws shining with a cold light. Don't panic. Although he's a Beaumont, he's still a piece of trash. Omega smiled. I don't need to transform to defeat him. With that, Omega's body suddenly accelerated, punching towards the huge Beaumont. Gotcha! A miserable cry came from Kay's mouth. Omega's strength was astonishing. With just one punch, his arm was dislocated and his huge body fell to the ground. You piece of trash. You actually dare to make a move against me? Omega's eyes were filled with coldness. She didn't give up and punched Kay's body with her shining fist. Kay was beaten until he was rolling on the ground. Pa! The sound of bones breaking came from his body. Omega's attacks were very measured. She controlled her strength very precisely. She didn't hurt his appearance and only broke his bones. When she beat Kay, the adults didn't come out. Also, with Kay's position in the Beaumont family, they didn't care even if they came out. That's right. That's how a piece of trash should be beaten. Tommy's fear had long disappeared. What replaced it was a kind of excitement, the pleasure of ravaging the weak. He couldn't help but cheer for Omega. In the luxurious hall, the banquet was still going on. At this moment, a commotion came from the east side of the hall. Ah, it's you. Master Zhu is here. Master Zhu, who is he? He is Master Zhu, who ranked 5th in the last Young Masters tournament. TSK, TSK, TSK. Master Zhu said earlier that this year, he must make it to the top 3. The guests were discussing animatedly. As a figure stepped into the hall, the whole hall became lively. In the hall, no matter whether it was the orcs or the humans, everyone held their breaths and quietly waited for their idol, the young expert of the Orc Empire, the Wind Knight, Zhu. Zhu wasn't tall. On the contrary, he looked a little short. His face was expressionless. With a hint of calmness that was rarely seen among the young men, he slowly walked into the hall. Morin had already returned to Ron's side. When Zhu appeared, a trace of excitement flashed through her beautiful eyes. Ron, he is Zhu. Ron had already arrived at this orc knight who was like the moon surrounded by stars. He slowly nodded his head. This was his strongest opponent. Raindrop glanced at Zhu, but she didn't seem to care. TSK, he is not as handsome as my brother Ron. Morin looked over unhappily. Ron also glared at her fiercely. Raindrop was shocked. What's wrong with these two today? It was as if they had eaten gunpowder. Nizi sensibly closed her mouth and didn't dare to say anything. Kay, why are you like this when you go to the washroom? Basara was full. She was a little worried when she saw the empty seat beside her. Sorry, I need to go to the washroom. Ron finished his meal. He stood up and took a napkin to wipe his mouth. Kay was a very sensible child. He was a little worried when she went to the washroom. After a while, Omega finally stopped. She revealed a relaxed smile. Do you know how powerful I am? Do you think a piece of trash like you is qualified to fight with me? Kay was completely lying on the ground. He was on the verge of death. He was only breathing out, not in. I didn't expect him to be a Beaumont. He is so weak. At this moment, Tommy came up and laughed. Don't say that. Even with your strength, you can easily beat him down. Omega clapped her hands and laughed. Tommy's eyes lit up when he heard that. Even I can? Why else would he be a piece of trash? Omega laughed. Kay was lying on the ground. All the bones in his body were broken. He lay there motionless. The only thing he could move was his pair of eyes. These eyes were staring at them, shooting out deep-rooted hatred. Tommy glanced at the young man's eyes. He felt as if he was being stared at by a wild beast. He couldn't help but shiver. Omega was somewhat dissatisfied. You good for nothing. You're afraid of a piece of trash? Tommy smiled with difficulty. No, it's this pair of eyes. It's making me uncomfortable. Omega coldly snorted. She kicked Kay and said, Trash, what are you? Then I'll dig your eyes out. At this time, Tommy's heart moved. He laughed. Why don't we just kill him? Anyway, this piece of trash is a waste of food in this world. It will bring shame to your Beaumont's name. Think about it, if my strength can defeat this Beaumont, won't your Beaumont clan feel ashamed? That's true. Omega pondered for a moment and laughed. Her eyes flashed with a trace of killing intent. She laughed and said, Since that's the case, I'll send him on his way, so that he won't suffer in this world. Omega slowly clenched her fists, making a pi-pi-pa-pa sound. Her fists were shining with light. She laughed sinisterly and approached step by step. Goodbye, Kay, you loathsome piece of trash. Omega sneered. Her fist suddenly struck out. With a strong wind sound, it blasted towards Kay's head. This fist was not as simple as breaking bones. She wanted to take Kay's life. At this time, a figure suddenly appeared in front of Omega and Kay. Following that, a huge shield came out of nowhere and quickly erected. Hong! Omega's fist landed on the shield. She used so much force that it made a loud noise. The dust on the ceiling fell to the ground with a plop sound. Omega was slightly startled. When she saw the person who came, her eyes flashed with a trace of disbelief. Ron? You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.